Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to In Your Ear Radio. I am your host, Latoya. Happy New Year. I'm very happy to be with you today. Hopefully, everybody can hear me clearly. You know what I do? I have to share the videos. I've shared the video in our Facebook In Your Ear Radio group. You guys, don't forget to like and share. We're also on YouTube, so thank you all that are watching on YouTube as well as Facebook Live. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all. Ooh, Lord. Ooh, it's been rough. It's hard out here for you know what. It's been rough, you guys. But nonetheless, I feel very blessed and very grateful to be present today, and in better spirits than I have in the past few weeks, considering everything that I've been going through. And I know a lot of you are. I'm just looking on Facebook now, and I'm just seeing people losing people on the eve of a new year, and it hurts my heart. So I'm sorry for everyone who's going through it. We all feel different, but I know that pain cuts deep. So I just pray for your strength. Hey, Pieces of She podcast. Happy New Year. I know you just closed out your last um, episode with the music talent. So yeah, I enjoyed that. Just learning about you. That was fun. So I appreciate it. You guys know this is going to be a very informative show. I call it Big Facts. We'll be talking to someone who's educated in vaccines and the development of vaccines. And I'm just appreciative of her time on New Year's Day to be able to discuss that. So we'll be talking about that today and answering questions. A lot of you guys send me questions and she's prepared to answer them. And hopefully we can get a better understanding of this vaccine, whether you're with it or against it. You need to know what it is and what it's about. You have to be able to have you should have an informed decision about the choices that you make, right? And to be able to educate other people. You don't want to just give them, stuff that just whatever, you want to be able to tell them the facts. And that's what this is all about. So I know that this is going to be fruitful to all of you. So thank you all for watching and tuning in. And I know some of you are still trying to hop on, and a lot of you are probably out shopping, because usually on this day, I would be somewhere in Dillard's. There are discounts on shoes. I'm a shoe fanatic. I love shoes. It's like 70% off New Year's Day. But I cut that out a couple of years ago because it just got way too crazy. And then the pandemic was just, I sealed that deal. I won't be going into Dillard's and buying my nice expensive shoes at dirt cheap prices. I'll go online though. So there you go. But again, happy holidays. For those of you who follow me, you probably even seen me troll a few people. I don't know how some people took it, but I posted on my social media that, nobody asked me, but I'm just saying every holiday is made up. And I say that because around this time, right after Christmas on December 26th, some of us, we start to celebrate Kwanzaa. And I just hear the echoes. I hear people saying stuff like, oh, it's a made up holiday. Oh, it's not real. And the person who developed it was this, that, and the third. And I'm thinking, yeah, all holidays are made up. For whatever reason, whatever significance they may be, down to the birthday, they're made up, right? We picked a day to say this is a day that we'll celebrate. And it is what it is. I like holidays in its, the concept. I'm not into the material aspect of it, the consumerism and everything that goes in it when it comes to the emotional aspect, where people just overindulge just to be able to partake, to feel like they're doing something special for someone on a holiday. I like just community, being with people and things of that nature. That's how I roll. But happy holidays for everybody celebrating Kwanzaa, that celebrated Christmas, New Year. What do we have? A Hanukkah coming up, right? So much is going on. A fun fact, though, a lot of other countries call a holiday any day off. So we call a holiday something that's probably on the calendar as mandated federally or statewide, right? Labor Day, Christmas, blah, blah, blah. But any day off to them is a holiday. So the weekend, that would be a holiday to them. A vacation would be a holiday. So I just thought that was pretty interesting, along with the fun fact that every holiday is made up. I spent the New Year Eve with my family, social distancing on Zoom again for the second year in a row. And it was so much fun. And we laughed. Oh my gosh, I did not expect to stay up to West Coast countdown. So I'm in Vegas and our countdown is at midnight. I sent everybody the broadcast that we were going to do the countdown for East Coast. And East Coast ends their countdown ends at 9 at night, right? That's when they bring in the new year. And so I did 3. So if I look tired, y'all, this is why, because they had me up, and you know, when you up, you drinking and you laughing and you just trying to hang. But I did three. I did the East Coast countdown at 9. We did Colorado countdown with my sister in Colorado. Shout out to Bree, who hung in there with us. And then they forced me to stay up until midnight Vegas time, y'all. I was literally like eyes closed, but I had so much fun. We laughed, we joked. I'm so grateful. I don't mind telling this story because I know she posted on social media, so it is public. One of my sisters went through a tough, rough battle with COVID. Like I said, I'm surprised there's no gray hair because I was stressed out. I'm still recovering from the level of anxiety and trauma that this monster, as my mother would call it, rest in peace, has caused us, my family, me, my spirit. But I'm so grateful that she pulled through. And what a beautiful gift. Right at New Year's Eve, right before the Eve, we were able to talk and laugh and not have to worry so much about her condition. And I'm just so grateful to God for that because it was so stressful. Thank you for everyone who prayed. I was on everybody's hotline. As a matter of fact, this is how I connected with the young lady that we're going to be chatting with shortly, is because I was utilizing all of my resources. Everybody knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. And I was used my street smarts and started connecting with people that I know, and they knew people, and we, were able to get what she needed and just do it, whatever I can. I would never want to say that I didn't do everything I can to help my sister. And I'm so grateful, so grateful. So that is definitely my moment of gratitude, as some of my favorite people would say that I listen to on other podcasts. I'm so grateful. Let me know what you're grateful for too, fam. Shout out to Belle. I see you. Hey, okay, so she's tagging other people. I appreciate that you guys watch live. This is going to be a very good show. Let us know in the chat what you're grateful for. Do you have any New Year's resolutions? Yeah, during this Zoom, my son wanted to bust my bubble, I guess, or just educate us. Bless his heart. It's funny too, if you guys have children, adult children, especially when they start schooling you, and you start thinking like, wait a minute, I told you that when you were a baby. I told you this, but it's all good. I'm glad that at this point it has, sunk in wherever he decided to take that information and stick with it at whatever level he got it. But anyway, he wanted to let us know that he was joining us Zoom for New Year's Eve just because he wanted to be amongst family, that he actually celebrated the new year during the spring, which is that's when the rebirth of everything comes about. Oh, okay. That's beautiful. And it's true. Most countries, I think, out of the 26 countries that there are 26 countries that have different dates for New Year's. And many of those 26 countries do celebrate in the spring. So, it makes sense. If we talk about the winter solstice, we'll understand why things come about the way they do here in the United States. That's a whole nother history lesson we don't have time for. But I thought that was a beautiful thing that he learned that, because growing up, I didn't really enforce holidays, just in the same mind state that he's in, just being amongst family. That's the only reason why I was there. During the holiday season, we never really put up a tree and decorations for Christmas, and it was very low key. But when it was time to show up for family and break bread and just be amongst each other and make memories, that's what it was all about. So that what means the most to me. But I don't turn my nose up at anybody who chooses to go all out. I just say, don't overspend. If you ain't got it, you ain't got it. Your presence is the present. Just thinking about New Year's. It's just funny because I know growing up for me, my grandmother would always have us in shut-in. So we would be in church overnight. In church. Yeah, I got trauma. But overnight we would be in church, and I never understood it then. All I knew, it was Pentecostal and they were going to be praising God all night, and I was going to have to get up and testify about something good in my life. And I always had a story that I always shared as a kid. But later on, I learned what this is all about, because the shut-in is when the mostly in the Christian religion, they go into church and they pray together overnight to bring in the new year. But it's born through slavery. Our enslaved ancestors developed this type of ritual for the New Year's, and it started off because the slave masters, that was the eve where they would rent out their slaves for the harvest or whatnot. All of this associated with harvest and all of these things. But it was for the harvest. And so with the harvest, they would rent out their enslaved people. And so at this time, our ancestors knew that they were going to be separated. So a mother of 7, a father of 10 with a wife They knew that they were going to be separated and may never return back to each other. So they would come together and pray, and some of them would plan an escape. And then it became a watch night as well, because even after their freedom, which started in 1808, there was, and on New Year's Day, there was 1808, there was a short-lived emancipation where they were freed. And so it was even more important for them to have the shut-ins, because they had to pray and plot and just, send positive energy out to those who were trying to flee, because even though you were technically freed, you still had to watch out for watchmen, who we know as police officers now, but they were developed as watchmen to be able to capture anyone who was trying to flee, free or not. So, that was a big thing. But it turned into something that was even more festive, because once they were actually the final emancipation in 1863 under the President Abraham Lincoln, they went to church to celebrate this. So it became a celebratory thing, and they, prayed for those who were going to be on their way. But it was just a very trying time. I think about the things I just went through, that I've been through during this year alone, and years back. And I think our ancestors went through so much more. Imagine waking up on New Year's Eve and knowing that your son or daughter was going to be taken from you, that you were going to be taken from your family, that your man was going to be taken from you. Damn, it's just too much. And that's how we are great, great people, because we have withstood all of that. We are still here. We are still thriving. People are still looking to us for culture, looking to us for food. They're looking to us for the things that help them feel better about themselves, even though we don't get credit for it. And just during those times when these people were being snatched away, one of the enslaved, Sister Harrison, she was quoted by saying in 1937 that that's where the saying comes from, that what you do on New Year's Day, you'll be doing all the rest of the year. So when they were being taken away, that determined your destiny. When your son was snatched away from you during enslavement, that determined where you would be and what you would be doing for that year. Thank God we have different freedoms now. Hey, shout out to Daryl. I see you on YouTube. Okay. Thank you for watching so much. He says he loved the family, and shout out to his mom and In Your Ear LB. Hey, love you. And shout out to Belle, who's watching on Facebook as well. I see you, Bree Bree. Thank you. Good times, sis. Good times. And this to my love as well. Kira, she says she's very grateful for me. She's saying you, my favorite little big sissy, that COVID is the devil. And although I'm recovering, I feel so much better, and I cannot wait to be able to hug on you all again. I love you eternally. Listen, you already know, sis. I'm just grateful, overjoyed, over the moon, so happy. I know you're not all the way out the woods, but damn it, you're doing so much better, and I'm just grateful. Shout out to GB's on YouTube as well, who says, what's up, family? Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. Denise, I see you. Thank you for joining us, fam. Grateful for God's love, health, family, and peace. Ain't that the truth? You just really, some of us just don't know, what we're missing until we have to deal with tragedy and trauma. And it's unfortunate, and maybe that's just the way it has to be, and I'm just grateful for it. So you guys, we're getting into this conversation. I just want to touch base on a couple more things before I bring in our very, very special guest. I just want to tell you guys that, with the new year, there's a lot going on. I want you guys to watch these post-apocalyptic movies. I watched, what is it called? Mother Android. These robots are the future. They're going to take over our lives. They're going to take over us. And if you watch any futuristic movie, you'll see that, because in these futuristic movies, it's never thriving. It ain't like Vegas Nights. It's like, destitute. We're without. It's death. It's disease. It's weird. It's not like a better life. It's a worse life in the future. So check out these things just to see where we're going. I think this COVID is a prelude to that. A lot of these alien movies, NASA even reported that an alien can reproduce now. What in the entire, I don't understand that at all. But I want to just touch on this one thing before we move into our very, very important conversation. Every year they add new words to the dictionary, right? Every year they add new words to the dictionary, and some new words they've added, just for your reference, is flex. So, this is our culture, y'all. Flexing is in this dictionary, and cancel culture. And Black people are definitely the the originators of cancel culture. So that's what's up. And sapiosexual. I'm going to send that to my cousin Tasha Jackson, who may be watching, because she called me weeks ago asking me about doing a show about sapiosexual. And I'm like, what are you doing with your free time? Where do you come up with these words? So I want to do a show about that and talk about sapiosexual. For y'all who don't know what that means, look it up. It's very interesting. And I just made up my own popular words for 2021. Y'all tell me what y'all think they are. You can put them in the chat. But I said some of the most commonly used words in 2021 was energy. I heard a lot of people saying, my energy, the way my energy set up, I don't let, certain people's energy trigger words, your emotions trigger. That was real popular. Common term used, trigger. Of course, trauma. A lot of people using that term, trauma, and also vaccine and COVID, which makes the list again for another year. So that's what's up. But just talking about this vaccine, you guys, I know there's a lot of mixed emotions about it. I have mixed emotions about it. I can't really say where it comes from. When I talked about the flu, when I got my shots as a kid, chickenpox and all of that, no issues. I never got a flu shot because I felt like you're gonna give me the flu, I'm good, and so I veered away from it. But I think with this vaccine, I think a lot of our discomfort, we could talk about ski, but a lot of our discomfort comes from our last president, number 45 in office. It kind of conditioned us not to respect science and respect those who had something to say, to contribute. Okay, and shout out to Lisa. She said in love with a smart person. Okay, she said she's in love with a smart person. Elaborate, please. Elaborate. Yes, Vegas needs to be in the dictionary for sure, because Vegas is a thing. Shout out to Vegas. If you guys don't know, they got some nice luxury face masks. You can look really cute going out, t-shirts and caps. So go to vegas.com to learn more about that. But I want to introduce Justine. She's our guest today, who is a scientist. She's going to talk to us about this, and we're going to, get some understanding. And she has a MSPH in infectious diseases and microbiology. She joins In Your Ear Radio to lend her expertise from studying the branch of science that deals with the study of viruses, as well as studying the science of substances used to stimulate the production of antibodies and provide immunity against one or several diseases. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome everybody, Mrs. Justine.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, and yourself?
I am well. Like I said, I'm very grateful. I have a lot to be thankful for. And I'm just, even you being here today, I think is a blessing, because we just met having a conversation with someone who you know personally. And I know that was dealing with COVID. She's a long hauler, and we've always checked on each other. People know this. My mother and my brother passed 2 weeks apart in the spring, and due to COVID. So I would keep in touch with her, especially when my mom was in the hospital, to try to get advice. And then when my sister got it, I was back on the line trying to get advice. And all the questions I started asking her, she was like, hold on, let me get somebody on the phone that can answer these questions for you. And you didn't miss a beat. You made me feel very comfortable. I didn't feel stupid asking you the questions that I had. And you're so knowledgeable. You can tell you had way more you could have spit out, but you was trying to, spoon feed me. And I was like, my audience needs to hear her, because she's not talking to us like a lot of these scientists do. And, people with education in medicine, something that a lot of us may not be, educated in. She's talking to us on our level, where we can understand it, So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
I tried. Thank you for having me. I will try to give as much knowledge as I can. I do want to give a disclaimer that this is not related to what I do currently. So any of the opinions that I give is solely of mine. So, but thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I just love and appreciate it. You got some fans in the chat. Shout out to all of y'all. Give them a girl a shout out. So explain to us what your title MSHP is.
That means Master of Science in Public Health.
Okay.
I attended the University of Pittsburgh, and I did some of my research on HIV, which is a virus that is not similar, but it is a RNA virus just like COVID.
Okay.
A lot of that changes, and reason why we don't really have a vaccine for HIV is because RNA viruses do mutate a lot quicker than DNA viruses.
So just from there, what is an RNA virus?
RNA, okay, so basically the way our cells work is we have the DNA, which is inside the nucleus of the cell. And from the DNA, you create the RNA. And then from the RNA, you create the proteins.
Okay.
So the RNA is kind of like that middle step before we create the proteins that our cells need in order to thrive in the body. That's what the virus does. It sends that messenger out so that our cells, so it doesn't go into the nucleus where the DNA is, but
Okay.
it does go outside the nucleus, and it outside of nucleus, it basically um, turns that message into the proteins that the virus needs to go ahead and create, like the envelope, which is like the little shell, and
Hmm.
those spike proteins that you see on the pictures that when it comes to COVID, so
Hmm.
that it can go on to go and infect other cells and make more of itself.
Okay. So how did you get into this? Is the correct title for you a virologist in the aspect of looking at this type of development for vaccines and
I wouldn't go as far as a virologist, because that's more of a specific field, or more of
okay.
a specialty. I tend to deal with just any kind of microbes, any kind of small organisms. It could be parasites, it could be fungus,
Okay.
bacteria, just any of those things.
And how did you get interested in it? Like some people
Uh,
want to be veterinarians. You wanted to look at cells and and develop vaccines.
um, I would have to give credit to my uncle who passed away when I was around 15 years old. He died of HIV.
Okay.
Um, and just kind of seeing what he went through. And then also just having family members who died from cancer and stuff like that. I knew I wanted to help out people, but
Hmm.
I know I didn't want to be necessarily a doctor or a nurse.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to go more into research.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. One of the best STEM specialists she knows. That's what's up. That's a lot of love. So just are you popular? Like you're a black woman. Are there many of you in this field that study this type of medicine?
Sadly, no. I always try to encourage whenever I see anyone Black, especially African Americans in particular, because I do have a lot of foreign colleagues. That does give some Black representation, but I do feel like as an American, our representation is kind of lacking in the science field. So when I do come across, like, another Black person, I always have to give a shout out. I got a couple friends in Canada who are Black, and a couple friends here in the US who I try to, have some camaraderie with, and pitch ideas and everything too. But even some of my younger friends who are just starting off in their career, if I can help them out
Yeah.
and kind of guide them, I definitely try to want to see more of us in there, because not only are we not represented in clinical trials
Hmm.
very well, we're not also, and I think partly is because we're not really represented in the field.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Because we have to be in those seats to be able to have someone to speak up for us. We have to
Exactly.
have an advocate there. So I hear you 100% with that. Is it a lot of education required? Is it a lot of schooling? Is it expensive to get into this career?
Um, expensive.
Because that matters, right? Money matters. We don't know what Biden gonna do with these student loans.
I definitely took the expensive route. Can it be a little less expensive? I think it can be. That's where it comes into play of knowing someone who's been in college and kind of listening to them, of course, and working your way on paying those things. But education wise, it was a standard 6 years for me, 7, just because I am a mother
Yeah.
And I did start a little later than a lot of people in college. So I was a little bit older than a lot of people. So just trying to balancing family and trying to work and take care of, my family and try to do a STEM field. It was a lot of the juggling act, but I knew since I was like 15 kind of what I wanted to do, and all that adversity going to a predominantly white
Yeah.
institution, just kind of fueled that fire to keep going and to do what I always wanted to, do in life.
Yeah. So I know your main focus is in HIV specifically. Are you trying to develop a cure or just something to treat it?
Currently, I'm not working in HIV.
Okay.
I'm not doing any bench work,
Okay.
but I do still work in public health in just a different capacity, which I love. But when I was in grad school and once I graduated, I was working in HIV. One of the things I did once I left grad school was do a retrospective study. So I took samples of serum samples from HIV patients from like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and we tried to make a connection between the drugs that were used during those times and the viral load, which is how much virus was in the system,
Hmm.
and see if, like I said, retrospectively, if any drugs were actually a little more beneficial or maybe not as beneficial as, we thought during that time.
Yeah. So let's talk about viral load. I know we talked about it over the phone. Viral load is a good thing, right?
No.
No.
You want a low viral load. So
Okay.
in that aspect, that would be a good
Okay.
thing.
Not.
um, so viral load is basically how much virus is in your system, how much that virus is replicating or making copies of itself. So you definitely want a lower amount of virus, if not zero or undetectable
Okay.
at the very least,
Okay.
um, amount of virus, because, if your cells are too busy making viruses, it can't make what it needs.
Okay.
So you definitely want low to no virus if possible.
So why would your body be making viruses? Is that just a natural thing?
It's definitely a natural process for your body, like your cells, to take genetic material and to make what it needs. So in the case if let's just say you're not sick or anything like that, your body takes that DNA and then it translates it into RNA, and then it transcribes that RNA into the proteins that your cells need in order to function. Like,
Hmm.
we could call it like food,
Okay.
and stuff that it needs to thrive and to keep producing what you need. So stronger muscles, if that's the case, or, just feeding the cells the oxygen and the nutrients that to keep it running so that you can, keep thriving yourself. But viruses kind of hijack that.
Yeah.
They tell the cells, don't worry about what you need, create this. And
Hmm.
so that's why viruses aren't a good thing, because now your body is too busy, or your cells I should say, is too busy focused on creating what the virus needs and not what that cell needs.
Got it. So shout out to Peaches of She who has a question. She said, "What keeps a viral load low?" I think you kind of touched on it.
It could be several things. You can have medications. So in a situation of like HIV, you got your antivirals that will, or even in flu too, because there's antivirals that you can take if you have the flu as well, that keeps that virus down so that it's not affecting as many cells. Um, you can also, like, your immune system helps
Hmm.
out as well. So when your white blood cells prevents the virus from going into the cells, that makes it a lower amount of copies because now there's not so many virus infecting cells. It can also prevent those cells, like destroy those cells, which can happen as well, so that that cell is no longer replicating that virus. So there's different ways your body can basically attack any foreign invaders.
Yeah. So that makes sense. So depending, it could be down to your white blood cells. If you have a low number and now you're something invading your body, it just weakens it more and more. So even if you're eating right and doing what you can to keep your immune system up, if it's already weakened and this virus is tougher than what you got. It's like an army. I'm just kind of
Yeah.
trying to visualize like an army. And so like that's how the US has stayed on top, because we have more guns than a lot of other countries. That's how we won the Revolutionary War, right? We have more guns. And it's kind of like that when it enters your body. Any virus that has more guns is going to win, regardless of what you're eating, regardless of what you're doing. You got to be able to be stronger, basically.
Hmm.
Okay, so the other question I had here was, do you think weed can hurt people more from viruses? So does weed affect how a virus affects you?
Um, Studies have shown that marijuana, which is more likely the CBD in marijuana, not necessarily the THC, because the THC is psychoactive, so that's where you get the high and stuff
Right.
like that. But with the CBD part of marijuana, um, it may have some from a study that I recall, and don't necessarily quote me on this because marijuana is not my field of study. But from what I recall, there was some antiviral activity
Mm-hmm.
with it. Now, does that translate into your body? That's another question. We can show a lot of things in the lab, but when you start ingesting and stuff like that, then you got other chemical processes that are happening, and so it may what you see in the lab may not really reflect in real world.
Right, especially if Black people are represented, because our immune systems are a little different, just based on our history of where we've lived and environments that we've lived in. Right, even when I think back to like sickle cell. A reason why it's prominent in Black people is because most of us come here from Africa, where our bodies sickle to fight malaria.
Hmm.
So we come here to the States where malaria isn't an issue, but now we have to deal with our blood cells still sickling, because that's what it's been trained to do, to fight against malaria on another continent.
Yeah, so what happens is the malaria is a parasite, and that was actually that was my thesis research.
Oh,
And so having the sickle shape or the C shape red blood cells, it actually made it harder for the parasite because it also makes it rigid too.
yeah.
So it made it harder for that parasite to go ahead and invade those red blood cells.
Mhm.
So it caused basically anyone with that genetic makeup to be less likely to have to get malaria
Right.
or to get a severe form of malaria. If you have like the trait, there's some
Yeah.
protection.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to break this down. I want to talk about the three different vaccine types here in the United States. I want to talk about testing, and then I want to talk about a lot of the questions that a lot of people have as far as the vaccine, just debunk a bunch of things. I'm trying to think, which should we start with first, the testing or the actual vaccine type? I kept going back and forth with this. So I'm gonna let you pick which one you want to talk about first.
Um, let's talk about testing.
Okay, let's talk about testing. Okay, so one of the main questions was, when people go get tested, we know we have these different. We have what, the Delta, now we have the Omarion. Okay, Omicron, and and of course we have the original COVID-19. We have these mutations going on, and they're telling us, oh, they can tell us when. I'm going to just say Omarion because I just like saying it, y'all. But we Black, we know what we talking about. So Amarion came here. They can tell you where, what states have it, blah, blah, blah. But when you go get that test and you say, well, which virus do I have? Or which, what is it, variation do I have? They tell you they can't tell you. And so that gets a conspiracy theory going in people's heads, like, y'all just making shit up, because you just telling us it's a virus, but you can't tell us what it is. And as a patient, I need to know. So why aren't they telling them when they're getting tested up front which one they have, which variant?
Okay. First, I'm gonna give a little background information. So, if you recall earlier, I said that COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 is an RNA virus. One thing about RNA viruses, and we're all, we done been living with HIV in our community for a while, so we know it mutates. RNA viruses are really prone to mutating a lot. The flu is also an RNA virus as well. So that's why you get, a shot annually for the flu vaccine or for the flu. So the same thing with COVID-19. It's an RNA virus. It mutates, and so that's how you start to get variants. Once you get enough mutations, it become a variant. Um, so what's happening when you're going to get tested is they're just testing for the absence or presence. Um, so when you go and get your PCR test, because that's the only way you can truly determine if you're infected, that's the gold standard that in pretty much almost in any public health field we go by. Even if we're diagnosing something else like staph or something, we try to do a PCR test.
So there's
Um,
two tests though they do, right? There's
excuse
two
me.
types of tests: the PCR and the rapid.
Well, the rapid can be anything from the antibody or the antigen.
Okay.
Um, the antibody is usually blood. The antigen is like the swab in your mouth and everything. And so, just to kind of clear up the difference between the three, is the PCR test that you're infected with it. You may or may not have symptoms, but it just says that you're currently infected with it. The antibody means that you probably had it previously
Okay.
or you got vaccinated.
Okay.
So you built up antibodies to it. So it's just testing that you have antibodies to that virus, which in this case is COVID-19. Then the antigen usually tells you if you're currently infected by it. So a lot of that rapid test is an antigen test, which is basically seeing that the antigen is what the antibodies would connect to. So if the antibodies were like Y shape, then the antigen would just attach to it. So that's all it's doing is having antibodies on the test. And if you have antigens in your system, it will attach to those antibodies and turn that line pink.
Okay.
So when you're getting tested at the clinic or the hospital, all they're doing is doing a PCR test, which takes about 3 hours. Because what it's doing is taking like it's like a building block and it's testing to make sure that exact material is there in your system. Now, the reason why they don't go on and tell you which variant you have is because that actually takes a different system than what's being tested. Um, that will have to be called sequencing. So they take those building blocks, think of like Legos. They take those building blocks and they take that material that told you that needs to get transcribed, and they put those building blocks there and say, oh, okay, we found these mutations, so that means you have the Omicron
Hmm.
or you have Delta, which are the two most prevalent ones in the US. Um, the reason why you're not going to get it, another reason why you're not going to get it at the hospital, besides not being sequencing, is your treatment is going to be the same.
Okay.
If you're showing respiratory distress, which means you're not breathing very well, they're going to treat you the same way. They're either going to give you those monoclonal antibodies or they're going to give you steroids or whatever treatment they decide that you need at the time. So there's really no um, benefit to really knowing which
Okay.
variant you necessarily have. And if you're thinking, well, we hear that Omicron, you're more likely to survive, which I guarantee someone's thinking that right now. I get it.
Right. So
And so
I
you will
got
want to
that
know,
too, right?
right? But the thing is, and this kind of leads into something else, but it's kind of like, I want to say kind of like gambling.
Okay.
Just because someone might be good at the blackjacks table, that don't mean you're just as good as the house.
Okay.
That don't mean your odds of winning is going to be the same as someone else. So basically what I'm saying is that don't mean your immune system is going to react the same way as everyone else's. This is just a generalization.
Mhm.
There's other factors of obesity and immune compromise and even,
But,
genetic factors. Yeah, that would, determine, and even environmental and then even in treatment too. You know, um, I might not get it treated just as well as Trump when he was president. So my outlook might not be the same, even
yeah.
though I'm younger than him.
Yeah.
Um, so there's so many factors that you can't even really calculate someone's risk on individual risk on surviving.
Yeah.
This is just a generalization of the population, and we really don't even know the survival rate. People would give you like the 99%, but we're still in the pandemic. And like I said, it's based off of region, person, background. If you've taken steroids because you have some other issues,
Mhm.
asthma or something like that, that also reduces your immune system too, which might make you susceptible.
Okay.
So there's plenty of factors that play. So at the end of the day, they're not going to tell you what variant you have because the treatments are going to be the same. They're going to treat the symptoms and
Okay.
not the virus itself.
So one of the questions is if there's no benefit in knowing which variant you have, why do they tell us about these variants?
Um, from a public health standpoint, it is good to know. And I think for transparency too.
Okay.
You don't necessarily want the government to be keeping that stuff a secret. So I think it's definitely uh, good to know what's out and circulating in your community.
Hmm.
And even if you go to your state's public health website, it should tell you by your state or someone else's state if you go to theirs or even in the CDC, what variant is circulating in that community. And depending on your how your public health lab in your state is running, it might even tell you by zip code,
Hmm.
depending on how efficient they are,
Yeah.
that what's going around. But that information and who's really using that is beneficial to researchers to know, like, okay, we got a new variant out there, and that's how South Africa found out. They're like, well, we're seeing an uptick. What's going on here?
Yeah. We're
And so they
getting
started
more and more.
sequencing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, we got a new variant going on. We see that it lowered the vaccine efficiency. We
Okay.
might want to make, other people, other states, other countries aware that this is a variant that's going on in our country.
So they saw initially there was probably, just it was at a, a standstill, basically we're getting rapid increases. And then all of a sudden it was just an influx of new viruses. So they went into the lab and started looking to see if things look different. And
Yep.
they said, oh, wow, that's a Marion dancing ass. And then they came up with something new.
Exactly. And then that also helps us when we know what variants are circulating, we can get that information on, like I said, how effective the vaccine is, how effective treatments are,
Yeah.
how people are faring with this new variant. So we know that, Omicron, people tend to survive a lot, survive the infection versus Delta, which is more deadly.
Yeah.
So this is good information to know. But when it comes to treatment, your treatment for now is the same. Now something might come along and they might find a drug that might be more effective for this variant versus
Yeah.
another variant. So that is a possibility. But for what we have now, that information is from a treatment standpoint is not really needed, especially when you need acute care. I
Right.
mean, do you really want to go to the ER, suffering from breathing, and you want to wait for them to sequence this? And sequencing can take a while. So
Yeah.
you want to be treated right away. I can't breathe, like, so yeah,
Yeah.
so that's why it's not necessarily that it's not important. It's just not necessarily right now at this time important for treatment.
Right, they're going to treat your symptoms regardless of which variant you have. So shout out to Denise on YouTube who says, "How accurate are the over-the-counter home tests?" And I want to elaborate on that because I know a story of family who are very safe. They're vaccinated. They wanted to go visit another family member in another state. So before they did that, they did the rapid test. I can't say they did it at home, but they did do a rapid test. They didn't do the PCR. It came back negative. They went and visited, mixed and mingled with the family. A couple of days later, they got a phone call. Hey, your test came back positive. So now they've been amongst family, which these family members now have COVID.
Mhm.
Um, so they had to leave, of course. But now we're trusting these tests to secure us because Biden's passing a bill that says your insurance company should cover rapid tests at home. But if they're not really accurate, what's the point? It's just false hope. So what's the point of having these tests, and how accurate are they?
Um, they are pretty accurate, even the ones that aren't the best in comparison to others.
Hmm.
Um, So they're pretty accurate, even if it's like 70% or 6%. I mean, we all would love 100%.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in science, nothing is 100%. Um, but
Shout out to birth
um,
control.
right.
99.9%
So um, I can't tell you. There's so many tests out there. I can't tell you, the accuracy of each one. Some are better than others, depending on what they choose to look at when it comes to the virus. Um, and how much of it they look at it, because you got something called specificity versus sensitivity. So it can be really specific, but if it's not really sensitive, then it's not really catching all the viruses. If it's really sensitive but not really specific, then you might get, some false positives.
And what is a false positive?
A false positive is where it's saying that you're positive when you're really not. Um, so it can be like really honed in, but it can be so honed in that it's just catching everything.
Yeah,
So you kind of,
it happened to Anna Lavara and Sunny on The View when the vice president, Kamala Harris, was on. They got a false positive. So she could not come on stage and they were removed from the show because they got a false positive. Comes back later that it was negative. So again, it goes back to the accuracy.
yeah. So when tests are being developed, hopefully, and I can't speak on every single company, but hopefully they're trying to create a balance of where you have both where it's specific, but also sensitive enough to catch those low viral loads. Remember that we were talking about earlier, viral loads.
Yeah.
Um, Another variation in it that could be happening
Hmm.
is how we take the test. So what happens in the lab setting, once again, may not necessarily translate in a real world setting. Let's
Hmm.
face it, who wants to stick a swab way up your nose
Wow.
to the point where you're tearing up?
Right.
It's not a
That's
very
happened.
comfortable. Yeah, we're not prone to give ourselves pain. So if we just do the outside rim, it might not catch it. At the same time, also, when have you been affected? If you just was exposed, you might not there might not be enough virus for it to detect. Remember I told you we're looking at antigens. So antigens is based off of how much virus is circulating in your system because you're
Hmm.
currently infected. So if you're in the early stages of the infection, it might not catch in some of these tests. Like I said, some are better than others,
Yeah.
but there's so much variation that can come to play with that. So if let's just say you had dinner with a friend last night who was COVID positive and you had an intimate conversation, you guys are laughing and and giggling in each other's face. They tell you they were positive the next day. You might not really show positive like 5 days later, but let's just say you waited 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might not have been enough time for your cells to make enough not immune for your cells to make enough of that virus for this test to detect it.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I think it does. Some people are scared to even take the test because they think it's something on it that might cause other issues, if not have an effect with the COVID. Do you know what's actually on the swab or what's on it, medicine wise, that is able to pick up? Is it dangerous? Is there side effects from getting a COVID test?
There really shouldn't be anything on a swab. It should just be a plain sterile swab,
Okay.
nothing more than cotton
And then they
on there.
something else to test it.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what liquid. I haven't looked exactly on um, what what's on the I'm assuming it's probably like a liquid. I haven't actually taken an
Yeah.
at-home COVID test. At the beginning of the pandemic, I actually went to LVAC, which is the Las Vegas
Yeah.
Athletic Center, to
That's
get
the night.
my test where they were offering it for free.
Yeah.
But so I actually did the blood and everything and the nose swab. But it should just be saline,
Okay.
which is just plain just water for the most part, that just distributes that that virus out into the filter,
Okay.
which has the antibodies that will attach to that antigen.
Okay.
Um, I don't see why there would really be anything else. And I say this as a disclaimer because I mean, I guess maybe there might be some preservatives in there, but
Okay.
nothing that I couldn't imagine, nothing that would be medicine wise or antibodies or even another virus. because it really wouldn't make sense, because the antibodies that are on this filter is specific for COVID.
Yeah.
And what they do is they test it for, when they do the antibodies, they test it against other viruses to make sure that there isn't any cross reaction, to influenza or to any other coronaviruses. Um, and that's where we get the specificity from, that is specific to um, that virus that is looking for.
Understood. Understood. I know when some people go in and get testing, they say later they caught COVID. Is there any way? Oh, I guess no, not testing, the vaccine. So let's go into the vaccine now, because that's basically what that was about. But there are three different types of vaccines, right? There's Pfizer here in the U.S. that we use. There's Moderna and Johnson and Johnson. So for me, just listening to different doctors and other people talk about their experience. My top vaccine is Pfizer, because I barely hear of anyone having any side effects that didn't already have any pre-existing conditions associated with COVID from Pfizer. But Moderna, I know that there is some more of a side effect, and then Johnson and Johnson, not necessarily side effects right off top, but blood clots is considered a serious side effect. So can you break down the different ones, starting with Pfizer? Like,
Um,
what's the difference in the three?
well, I'm going to put Pfizer and Moderna together
Okay.
because they're very similar. They're both mRNA vaccines, which means messenger RNA,
Okay.
which is what transcribes into those proteins that I was talking about,
Mm-hmm.
or I should say, translate into those proteins I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So both of those are similar in how the vaccines distribute that mRNA. The difference is the region on the spike protein, because the coronavirus has the spike proteins on a coronavirus are basically in sets of threes. So each spike that you see is actually a set of three.
And what is
And
spike protein, just for people who might
the,
not know?
okay, so the spike protein is what allows that virus to enter into the cells.
Okay.
So I look at, like, you have a receptor on your cells that takes that spike protein and it attaches to it, and then it allows that cell, so kind of like a lock and key, it allows that cell to open up and that genetic material to go in this case RNA, to go in, where then your body sees that RNA and say, oh, RNA, let me go ahead and translate that and create these proteins, because there's no discrimination. Your body's not going to be like, oh, we don't know this, mRNA. No, it's just going to see RNA, mRNA, and just translate it. And then it presents that protein on the cell.
Okay.
And then as the virus starts to assemble, then it kind of, I don't, the best word I can use, because I can't, I don't want to say like it just breaks out of the cell, but it kind of buds out,
Okay.
and then it goes on to affect other nearby cells. Um, so what's going on with those is, like I said, there are different regions of that spike protein that they're targeting
Okay.
in that vaccine. They both show very similar efficacy, which means how effective they are
Mm-hmm.
to COVID-19, even to Delta and now to Omicron. But they're just looking at a different region, because if I recall correctly, COVID, well, I don't want to get too much into the science, but I was telling you, like, the genetic material, COVID is pretty big when it comes to the genetic material. So you got a lot of material to work with, to target. And as a vaccine maker, you definitely want to target an area that stays consistent. Remember, I was saying how RNA viruses mutate.
Mm-hmm.
They do have regions that they need in order to survive.
Yeah.
It has to stay consistent, because if it mutates and changes, it can actually deactivate or um, not allow the virus to multiply or
So the,
replicate.
the goal is to cut it off at the head, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's what the vaccine is doing. It is teaching your body to recognize, this protein, or what's being presented on the cell, so that when it comes across the real thing, it can go ahead and attack it. Now with the Johnson and Johnson, what makes that different than the Moderna and the Pfizer is Johnson and Johnson is a little more of a traditional vaccine that we're used to. It uses an adenovirus, which has shown to cause like a little bit of cold in some people. It's been around for ages.
Yeah.
So, we're not really affected by it, but it's a really good vector or delivery system
Okay.
to allow that part to enter into the cells and once again make that protein so that your immune system, which is those white blood cells, can recognize a foreign particle or invader or however you want to look at it,
Hmm.
um, and attack it so that it doesn't cause any damage. So the Pfizer and the Moderna are very similar. Unfortunately, the Johnson Johnson has shown to cause blood clots,
Hmm.
even though it's extremely rare. Um, it has shown to cause blood clots, and they're not sure why. I suspect, and this is in my opinion, it's probably has something to do with the region that they chose for the vaccine. Not that it's not effective. Obviously, it's very effective, but we know that COVID also causes blood clots.
Right. I was thinking about, like, okay, so is that
So
that they're putting in? Is that
yeah,
some part of COVID in the Johnson and Johnson that they're putting in and too much?
so there may be something, and I can't say for sure, and I'm not sure if anyone really could say for sure. Um, but I speculate there's something going on with that. But in this case, whatever it is just causing an extremely rare event. From the recent data I looked at, I think it's been about 11 deaths. Don't quote me on that exact number, but it's an extremely low number in comparison to the 500 million vaccines that's been given. So those blood clots are, or I'm talking about deaths, by the way, is very rare. If it's caught early, then it can be treated early. But as far as like deaths and everything, it's extremely rare
Yeah.
for those to happen. And as far as the mRNA, I don't think there has been any data to really show um, any deaths conclusively.
Hmm.
So, and that's going to be looked at, and that may change. I just want everyone to understand that science is kind of is it's living information. It changes. As we get more and more information, those things change, and I know it can be very confusing because one day you might hear this information, and the next day it might change. But
Yeah.
that's the wonderful thing about science. It's not rigid.
Hmm.
It's not stubborn. It's not going to keep telling you wrong information just because it doesn't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
As more information come out, it's like, oh, well, we thought it was this, but it's actually this. And you want that. You want a field, especially when it comes to your health, to admit there may be some errors or there may be new information, and we might want to look at it in a different way or attack it in a different way than what we previously thought.
Yes, and I think that's where a lot of the hesitancy comes from. Some people just don't want to be, quote unquote guinea pigs, but looking at the statistics, the majority of people do survive. They are supposedly being protected, because I'm kind of concerned that so many people who are vaccinated are getting testing positive, whether they have severe symptoms or mild symptoms or no symptoms at all. So that's questionable, because when we first started off with this, and like you said, science is ever changing and they're learning as we go. But we trusted that getting the vaccine would prevent us from getting it being amongst other vaccinated people, and that's not what's happening. So.
Well, what's going on with that? And once again, like I said, a lot of this is when we hear is anecdotal evidence. Vaccinated people are getting infected, but then you have to ask yourself how many versus how many have been vaccinated.
Mhm.
Um, it's still a disease of the unvaccinated. If you don't have immunity to it, you're more likely to get it versus someone who has developed those antibodies. Um, it was never 100%. If you recall those statistics that first came out about Moderna and Pfizer, they were telling you and telling us, I should say, specifically that it was around 90% prevention of severe and hospitalization. It never said you couldn't get infected. No vaccine can really tell you will never get infected. I don't
Well,
care
Dr.
what.
Fox was saying unvaccinated can be, I mean, vaccinated can hang out with vaccinated. So I think that's what it translated to.
Yeah.
Like you're safe around people who got the shot.
And that's because when you're vaccinated, you got those antibodies. So remember I was saying how the vaccine trains your body to identify this foreign invader in it. So when, I love your analogy earlier about, having an army.
Yeah.
So if you think of your antibodies as armies or your white blood cells as an army, if you're around another person who has a nice little army, even if you're around, like, let's just say you're a family and one person is unvaccinated and they're positive and everyone else is vaccinated. The chances of that virus really going around to everyone in that family is a lot less, because as soon as that virus enter into your system, whether it's through your nose, your mouth, or whatever, your immune system is going to see it and it's going to attack it. And let's just say you have a weakened immune system, or whatever the case may be. Let's just say the person was just spitting out a high viral load as they were talking to you, and you weren't wearing a mask, and it overran your system, but you still have that army there. You still have those fighters to deplete. And if we want to go into like random numbers, if you have like an army of 100 white blood cells, and let's just say 50 viruses came in,
Mm-hmm.
that 100 can beat that 50.
Okay.
But if, let's just say, 200 pieces of virus came in, and these numbers are so arbitrary, so don't think this is actual real
I
life.
visualize it. Because you're talking
Eh,
about the viral load. Some people
yeah,
get a more concentrated load
yeah,
depending on how much they ingest. So
exactly.
what you ingest depends on how big your army is to be able to fight it.
Right. Right. So if you don't have a huge immune system, so in this case, Omicron seems like after a while your immune system, the antibodies start getting a lot lower. So that's why we got the booster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if it's a lot lower, then it comes across a huge viral load, it might get a little overrun. Now you probably won't get as sick. It's gonna fight. Like, your immune system is not gonna be like, oh, it's too many, I give up, I'm going home. No, it's still gonna fight. But it's just not gonna. It's not, your body isn't gonna be overran like if it would, if it never had the antibodies.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's important to get the vaccine, is because the vaccine does produce really good antibodies to the virus. And it's gonna lead me to this, 'cause I think someone might have
Yeah.
asked it earlier.
Someone was asking
Um,
about the antibodies. If someone has recovered from COVID and have natural antibodies for COVID, is it still necessary to get the vaccine?
yes, it is.
Yeah.
And that's because the vaccine, we can predict how the vaccine will work a lot better than how you getting
Antibodies.
infected naturally
Mhm.
by COVID. Now, yes, both will produce antibodies, but you produce a stronger response from the vaccine because it's specifically designed to do that. Whereas your immune system, it may amount a good response. It may, or it may not.
Right.
And then also you have to think of too, if I get naturally infected by COVID, we also have long haulers, which a lot of people neglect to talk about. Sometimes it's not just about surviving. It's about your quality of life.
Church.
Um, and we all, most of us, at least I believe, want to live a long and healthy life.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to live a long life in case of polio in a wheelchair, or you don't want to live a long life on oxygen when
Right.
when we had iron lungs going around. Like, you want
Organ
a good
failure.
quality of life. You want to still do what you're doing now, hopefully at an older age.
Yeah.
And you can't guarantee that if you get naturally infected. Same thing with, people think of chickenpox. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to go off on a rant, but it's kind of like
Oh
that
no, I
same
got a question
principle.
about chickenpox too. So you just go ahead. You go right
So
on it.
people, pox parties back in the day before there was a vaccine, but
Party.
then people forget the virus goes into your spinal column for some people, and
Oh,
it lives there. And so what happens when you get older, your immune system gets weaker when we get older, right? That's
I
why
see.
the younger and the older tend to get more sick than
Mhm.
those in the middle. And so when you get older, that virus comes out of your spinal fluid and start attacking your nerves.
And that's the
And
shame.
that's where you get shingles. So pox parties might have been the rage when, the vaccine wasn't there. But do you really want to risk being 60 years old and pain in your skin, feeling like it's on fire because now you have shingles? I mean, we got the shingles vaccine now, but it's that same thing. We don't know how COVID is going to act
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we're older, and besides even also the damage to our lungs and other things. Because one thing I kind of want to touch on is when I talked about receptors, which is that lock and key,
Yeah.
that the receptor that the virus likes to attach
Mhm.
is on so many different cells in your body. That's why we get so many variations of this virus, from COVID brain or COVID fog, or however people want to describe it, to your lungs, to your pancreas, to your liver, to your ears, your eyes. Like, that receptor is on so many cells. And so that's why it makes it unpredictable. You may get naturally infected, you may get those antibodies, but what damage is it going to cause?
Yeah. How many strong white blood cells do you have? How many do you have that are gonna be able to fight versus how many guns they come with, right?
Right, but like it's more to, like, let's just say you had COVID brain. I know people who had a mild infection, never had to be hospitalized, but they still struggle to remember. We don't know how that's going to look when dementia or just regular, old age and forgetfulness
What in the
comes
hell
into
is this?
play. So my thing is, why risk it? Yes, you might be young. Yes, you might be fit. You might eat the most healthy foods in the world, but we don't really know the long-term effect that this might have on us, especially as we get older and our bodies start to break down. So, might as well try to be the healthiest as you can now than to put your body at risk, and then now you're 60, and you might need assistance, and you thinking back like, I've been healthy all my life except for that one time I had COVID.
Yeah. So I wanna address Gerald's question. He has something about natural immunity, but that's one of the concerns I had. Like with this vaccine, we don't know how long it's effective. We get the antibodies. We may have to go back again in 6 months. With the flu, it's annually, right? Once or maybe twice a year, depending on your immune system. With the chicken pox, we got it boom, bam, boom, once as a kid, I think, maybe twice. I can't remember. And we haven't had to have it again. And like I had chicken pox, even though I got my shots as a child. I had chicken pox. Um, but in my our kids' generation, it's rare, very rare. So, I mean, I know this is new, and I guess it's kind of answering its own question, but at the same time, why do we have to get so many shots when all these other vaccines for chicken pox and polio, we were able to eradicate it? Boom, it wasn't an ongoing thing.
If you recall, a lot of those shots actually had series. If you recall HIB, which is Haemophilus influenza B, that's a shot of 3. So if you have a little one, you might recall your little one getting that third vaccine. So there's a lot of vaccines that come in a series. Not all of them are just one and done. And like you said, with flu, it's annual, and that goes to it being an RNA virus and rapidly mutating. So this might actually be an annual thing. And that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind as well. Um, Especially as we get more and more of these variants going around, as it decreases, the effectiveness of the vaccine.
Hmm.
It might be an annual thing.
Yeah.
And we might have to just keep doing that. And some people may choose, like the flu, to get it, and some people might, take that gamble or whatever and decide not to get it. And we might get to that point.
Hmm.
Um, but this is a new virus.
Yeah.
We really don't know the long term um, results of the vaccine. We don't know really how long the antibodies will be effective. We just know the antibodies are decreasing. We know more people are getting infected with Omicron because the effectiveness of the vaccine has decreased because of that mutation that happens. Um,
So when I'm visualizing, I'm saying this virus is saying, "Oh hell, they didn't came up with something to stop us. We got to build faster. We got to move faster. We got the army again. We got to move faster to spread it because they're trying to slow us down. We might not be as strong because now we running out. We winded because we trying to get this more people as possible. So we're not as effective as Delta, but we're spreading it faster than Delta because we time is of the essence when it comes to this monster. That's how I'm envisioning a Maricon or Marion.
uh, a little when you're vaccinated or when you have antibodies, we're just gonna leave it at just antibodies. It doesn't allow that virus to mutate as fast. So so you're not going to get as much of a mutation as someone who's unvaccinated and you're in a population of unvaccinated. Now this virus is entering so many cells that it's not being copied correctly. And so every time it's making more of itself, there's going to be more errors. So that's why they say these mutations are driven by those who are unvaccinated because they don't have that immunity to keep that virus load down. Um, and also if you look at when the variants that we do get, they're from populations that are low or vaccinated. They're not necessarily coming from higher vaccinated. Like we're not finding these variants necessarily in the U.S. These variants are traveling from other
Place.
areas and stuff like that. And that's because we do have a higher in comparison to those areas. But if we can get more and more people vaccinated and more people have those antibodies, then the virus has less places to hide, less places to multiply, less
Yeah,
chance to mutate
yeah.
than it would a population that has never been exposed before.
And so one of the other conspiracy theories was that maybe the actual vaccine is causing mutation because you think about it, say if everybody's on antibiotics, then it won't be able to do what it's supposed to do for those who get sick, right? If doctors are just giving you antibiotics when you don't need them, that's why a lot of people were using antibacterial. So everybody's using antibiotic stuff to where we can't help the sick when they really need it. Can the vaccine be doing the same thing, causing a mutation because everybody's getting a shot?
Um, I haven't seen necessarily evidence for it. I did kind of touch on it previously. It has a less of a chance to mutate it. That doesn't mean it's absolute zero.
Okay.
Um, but if you have this huge army versus one that doesn't really have an army, you're going to be more likely to want to go to where you're freely able to replicate. So if that viral load is low, it's not going to have as much chance to replicate and mutate when a person is vaccinated. So it's not really driven by those who are vaccinated. Like I said, it's driven by those who are unvaccinated just because it can go to more cells.
Mm-hmm.
The immune system is not recognizing it as well. Like it sees something foreign, but it's not instant like it would if you were vaccinated or if you had a previous infection. So your antibodies are your antibodies, no matter if it's vaccinated or naturally produced. So it's not going to have as much of a chance to mutate in a person who has those antibodies versus those who don't. Um, so yeah, so it's not driven by vaccinated, and like I said, I would say it's not absolutely not. It's not zero. Nothing is ever, like I said before, science,
There's
nothing
no
is ever
absolutes.
100%. There's no absolutes. So yeah, there could be a small chance, but in comparison to those who are unvaccinated, considering that only 62% of the population is fully vaccinated, you still got the rest of the population that isn't.
Yeah,
And not even have like so it still has a nice amount of people to mutate in versus trying to mutate in those who can amount a good defense to it. And then when in comparison it to or when compared to um antibodies, oh not antibodies, sorry, antibiotics. So antibiotics, when it comes, those are used for bacteria infections, which are different than viruses. um They're a lot bigger, for one, and Two, the way those escape the immune system is different than way viruses escape the immune system. So antibiotic resistance is a little more harder to combat because we only have so much in our arsenal. You can't just engineer an antibiotic like you can an antiviral or a vaccine. 'Cause like I told you, viruses are just genetic material. That's all it is.
Okay.
It's just genetic material where bacteria has more processes. It's cells. So
Okay.
you got genetic material versus cells. So it's a little harder when you're dealing with an actual full-on organism versus genetic material where you can look and see, oh, okay, I can disrupt it here, I can cut it off
Yeah.
here, and now it's in that.
Blueprint. You have a blueprint.
Yeah, yeah, I like that blueprint.
Shout out to Jay Z. Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of people are saying, why aren't they promoting, in the media, especially about, natural immunity, at least keeping your immune system boosted. Shout out to Joe who's on Facebook who says, are there any natural preventative measures that one can incorporate into their lifestyle to prevent contracting COVID?
um, I will say this once again: nothing is 100%, but if you're eating healthy and you're exercising, you're giving your body the best chance to mount a defense. It's not 100%. There have been, competitive bodybuilders and wrestlers who, I forgot what the guy was, who was some professional, um, in some kind of athletic profession, who passed away from COVID, I think, beginning of this year. And people were saying he was in his prime and, he was eating well. So there's nothing that will prevent it, but you definitely want to give your body the best. If you're not giving it the building blocks that your immune system needs, then yeah, you're going to be more likely to get infected. You're going to be more likely to um, maybe even have those more severe symptoms
Yeah.
than you would have otherwise. But that's with anything. That's with bacterial infection. That's with just your daily function too. If you're not eating right, you're going to feel tired. If you're not sleeping right, you're going to feel tired because you're not allowing those hormones and
Yeah.
those proteins to develop in your body. And so that's why sleep and eating is important just for whole body functioning together, even if you're not infected with anything.
Yeah. Makes sense. A lot of people think that and I guess this is off the record because who really knows, but there's a lot of conspiracy out there that this was a man-made, like when HIV AIDS came out, that this was something somebody created, maybe some type of what do you call that type of war? What is this considered?
Bio weapon or something.
Yeah, a weapon. Um, do you think what do you know about this? I'll say that then. What do you know about this? Is it something that was derived from animals that they made this up in a lab and they got out of the way? What happened?
We all would know, want to know what happened, right?
I don't know.
I suspect it's a natural thing. If anyone's been paying attention and you pay attention to Obama's administration, he had the pandemic response. Um, Fauci back then and others from the CDC said we were due for a pandemic. So this wasn't really a secret in those in public health and maybe in those who were kind of watching those things play out politically. Um, so I would suspect that this was just something naturally. Now, where did it come from? I wouldn't even know where to guess. I know they're suspecting bats because that's where a lot of coronaviruses are
Yeah,
coming from. So I think that's a good place. I think someone said an armadillo type animal in China, Pigon or something. I don't know how to say the name.
yeah,
Um, so that was suspected because there was a virus found that was really similar to what's going on now. Coronaviruses is a large group of viruses. Um, could it have been done in a lab? My personal opinion, probably not.
No.
And remember, I was telling you PCR and stuff like PCR is a wonderful thing. Science is a wonderful thing. Yeah, you can make stuff. I've made my own genetically engineered malaria, which was malaria for rodents, is what I was
Mhm.
researching, and the different drug effects. So I did have to manipulate some of the parasite and put some genetic material in there that gave me an indicator if the drug was working or not. So there is some manipulation, but the thing when it comes to genetic material is certain ways are easier. So you will look at those easier routes to try to create something.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, and I think this was last year, no one has found any telltale signs of genetic manipulation. And when I say that, like I say, I don't want to get too much into um, like uh, like the genetic building blocks of the ATGC and all that stuff, or
So you
AU.
know what it takes to
Yeah,
cause
but
something to create it.
but
Yeah.
yeah, so some of them basically bonds. If you remember chemistry from high school or whatever, some bonds are stronger than others. And so, as scientists, if you're going to manipulate some genetic material, you kind of want to look at the weaker bond so you can take it out easier.
Okay.
Um, and so those would be more of the telltale signs, and it hasn't really shown that.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not gonna say it's 100% because I don't know. I wasn't in Wuhan, so um, but they also think there's a wet market. I mean, we haven't really found where HIV really originated yet. I mean,
Right.
we expect bushmeat, but um, no one has really pinpointed. We might not ever pinpoint where coronavirus came
That
from.
might be classified.
It could be classified, or we just might not find the haha,
Yeah.
animal or anything. So uh, it could have mutated in someone who was eating it. So, it might not actually mutated in the animal. I mean, you got swine flu where we were interacting with, and I say we as humans, like pigs
Hmm.
and stuff, and it jumped from pig to human.
Hmm.
But we can't pinpoint it was that pig, or that,
Not
we
that little
just
piggy.
know.
It could have been this little piggy.
Yeah. So, I mean, we might, sadly, we might not ever really know.
Yeah.
But definitely the important thing is to definitely get our treatments, our drugs, to help those who might get infected and to help those to prevent infection. We definitely want to know the answer because it may be something, and it may give us a clue on how viruses jump from animal to human. Because there's definitely different ways it can do it, whether you're eating it or just being in contact from a cut or whatever. There's definitely different ways it can jump. But as far as lab grown, I would suspect probably not.
Okay.
But like I said, this is just being in my professional opinion on just how genetic material is manipulated. But I mean, hopefully we get an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully. Um, talking more about side effects. I also want to talk about treatment too. There's a lot of questions about the infusion. Specifically, I want to say it's called. Shout out to Pieces of She said that she had a family member who was not vaxxed and got the. Come on, help me. Regeneron.
Regeneron, yeah.
On monoclonal treatment and was better in 2 days. Why isn't this promoted more instead of the vaccine? Because I don't know, you're gonna get sick and you give it to you and you'll be fine. I don't know, but why don't they promote it more? And only certain people can get it at certain levels, at certain stages, right, of their illness.
Yeah. Um, we are still very new into this pandemic, and a lot of things are in short supply. A lot of things are kind of difficult to manufacture. So you definitely want to prioritize your resources.
Hmm.
So Regeneron is, and that's also, you have to give that IV. That has to be given intravenously. It's not a pill that you just pop and you're good.
Yeah.
So it has to be prepared. You got to have the staff to prepare it. And with so many people getting sick, you don't just want to give your precious resource just to anyone. You want to give it to the most vulnerable. So I'm glad that she was, or the family member was able to get
Yeah.
that monoclonal, because when it first came out, it was really hard for
Yeah,
anyone to get
uncomfortable.
it. So I mean, that was just in what? When did the president get it? Back in December or something or whatever. Um, and so I think that's when it kind of came out. So hardly anybody really had it then. So considering, a year later, it's more freely given. It's not just rationed out until you're close to being intubated and on a ventilator. So that's definitely good news that we have more treatments like Regeneron and convalescent plasma, and now we got this new COVID pill,
Right.
that's starting to be distributed. So we're getting more in our arsenal. It's getting there. It's getting there.
But what I don't like is how they pick and choose. It's like being distributing organs to me. Like you decide who's the most vulnerable, or what'll be the most effective. Like if a person is fighting for his or her life, and they have insurance. I mean, we folks, to me, the whole fact that we have free, and I'm putting up air quotes because nothing is really free, vaccines and testing, is because it's money. It's not because they want people to live. I don't think they care about our health. And I say they, I'm saying, the power that be, the government, those who are distributing it. It's our tax dollars that are paying for these vaccines. We're not having to come out of pocket again. But trust, they're not coming in, they're not digging, Congress and the Senate aren't digging into their deep pockets to pay for this. It is being paid for by our tax dollars. Just look at your paycheck and you'll see your money is going to places where they want it to go. But it bothers me that it's all about money, to get people to trust in this vaccine. I mean, I get it. For some people, it's just like a no brainer. Get the damn shot, reduce your chances of dying. If you go into the hospital, you ain't going to ask them what's in it. You ain't going to ask them how long it's been tested. You can say all of those things, but when you're not sick, it's easy to make that decision. And I know plenty of people after they've been sick, severely or mild, still don't feel comfortable because they're hearing things like it affects your menstrual cycle. It affects you giving birth. I had one person tell me that you're no longer human. It affects your DNA. It goes into your DNA and you're no longer human. Yeah, that was deep. But yeah. Um, so it just bothers me that money is on the table when we talk about infusions and all these different treatments. Give people what they need. That's why, you think about these other countries too, low third world countries, people who don't have access. They're not selling their patents so that they can create these vaccines to help other countries. They're giving them ones that are about to expire where they can't disseminate them fast enough, right? And these people are being affected because they want to keep the patent for the vaccine because it makes money in these pharmaceutical companies. So I think that's where a lot of the hesitancy comes from, without knowing the facts about whether or not it's going to save your life or not. You just think that people are putting stuff into your body that's going to make you have to keep coming back to them. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And so it's all about money. Even just talking about this infusion, they're picking and choosing who's the most vulnerable. Listen, this person has the same symptoms that this other person has. Now you want to break it down. It's like, to me, going into a courtroom when it's a black boy and a white boy. They have the same crime, but you look at their history. Oh, he comes from a well-to-do family. He has a future. When you look at this white boy and his parents have, letters behind their name, then you look at this black boy who commits the same crime. You say, oh, well, he's a thug. His parents are drug addicts. And then you decide he needs more time in prison. And this sweet little white boy who has a promising future can go home. That's how I look at it when we look at medicine, when you just decide who gets an infusion or not based on that. Tell me it's not going to work in 3 days because you have to use it at a certain time. Don't tell me, well, we look at the most vulnerable. We look at who we think is going to help. You playing with people's lives. People don't come back from death and long COVID that we know of yet. I hope they do, but I'm just saying all of the side effects that come with this. Why aren't we doing everything possible? And that's a rhetorical question. I know you can't answer that. I'm just venting. So many questions.
No, I get it. Definitely, when it comes to medicine, there is definitely privilege and prejudice
Yeah.
given in one form or facet. Um, in our country, and probably in some aspect in the world. Um, I would say that for anyone who has a true love for medicine and to help out people, um, hopefully that doesn't come into play, because that's not what a person like me um, got into this for. It was more towards helping, but unfortunately, you got bureaucracy. So the doctor can be as well meaning as they want, and they might want to give, every patient everything, including the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
But there's always someone above you, sadly, that may prevent you from being able to do everything you would like to do. Um, so yeah, so I mean, hopefully I always hope that one day we advance as humans
Yeah.
to be more caring, and to look at people as people, no matter, who or what they are.
Yeah.
But that's also, I mean, might be just too a little idealistic.
Yeah, that's me. I live in in my mind, I'm such an idealist. And that's just, shout out to all the realists, because y'all, I think y'all sleep better. You're going to be shocked when this mess happens. Yeah. And another thing I want you to just focus on before we wrap it up, if you guys don't have any other questions, I know there's a lot going on in the chat, and I know a lot of the questions you kind of addressed them in the conversation. So hopefully, if you didn't get an answer, you can go back and listen, and you'll hear her response throughout the chat. If you see something in the chat you want to address, go ahead, Justine. But the side effects, I think that was one of the big things for me, because like you said, with the Johnson and Johnson, some people are experiencing symptoms later, like with cold, cold symptoms. And I'm like, that's why I never got the flu shot, because I'm fearful of, I don't want to feel sick after getting a shot. I'll wait. I'll do my immune stuff. I'll take my vitamin D, my vitamin C, my zinc. I'll drink my tea, my elderberry. I'll mask up. I'll stay away from people before I take something and then end up getting a sore throat or being fatigued where I wasn't before. And that's just like a major concern. But I know you mentioned that, even people concerned about death, if you're going to have any side effects, two questions. If you're going to have any side effects, how soon will you have them? How long will they be? And the second question is, how long does this vaccine stay in your body? Because, like I said, people somehow you turn into another creature, you're no longer human. Does it leave your body, or is it like go in your spine like the other vaccine? Is that the vaccine or just the chicken pox itself?
Oh, that's the virus. That's the
Okay.
virus for
It's a
that
virus.
that causes chickenpox. That
Yeah, those two questions.
um
Does it leave your
once your
body?
immune system, yeah, it kind of evades your immune system by going into your spinal fluid.
Okay,
Because you
that's
really
the
don't have, you don't want white blood cells in your spinal fluid. I mean,
okay.
that's where your nerves are.
I
Where
wouldn't know.
you,
Somebody asked me, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, if you say
yeah.
so.
Well, that's spinal cord. So if someone,
You
you
don't
get,
want that in
that's
the
how, that's where you get, paralyzed and stuff. If anything happens right there, so
yeah,
that's a good place to evade the immune system.
yeah.
Um,
Imagine, yeah.
yeah. So, and like, oh, anyways, I don't want to get too into other stuff, but um, as far as I forgot everything, but I think I'm trying to address it all in one. Um, the vaccine, how long it stays in your system, we don't know. Like I said,
Okay.
this is very new. The vaccine was just started being administered back in November of last year. So we not too long ago just made that 1 year mark. But remember, it was first healthcare workers.
Mm-hmm,
So the general public really didn't get vaccinated till around January.
mm-hmm,
So we just made that year mark. So we really don't know how long those antibodies stay up at an effective level to prevent severe infection. Like I said, we can monitor those antibodies in our blood,
mm-hmm,
and they've seen a decrease. And I mean, when they were doing clinical trials, they're like, okay, this amount is 90% effective at preventing hospitalization. But we know, okay, at least at this right here, it prevents hospitalization. But as it drops down, we can't necessarily promise that. So when you get that booster, you want to kind of bring it back up to that promise level that we know about.
mm-hmm.
Um, so that's the reason why we're getting boosters and everything, because we want to keep that antibodies high enough so that we can mount a good response to it. Now, what was the other question?
So how long is it in your body? And
Oh, so the vaccine doesn't stay in your body very long. Remember, I was telling you it was like it's the messenger RNA, so mRNA, and all it is being translated to put those proteins on that cell. So when your white blood cells are circulating and they see this cell is presenting this red flag, like, "Hey, I got this on here," and it's
Mhm.
like, "Whoa, I've never seen this red flag before. Let me go check it out." Then it's gonna be like, "This, you don't belong there. You don't belong on this cell." So now when it sees that red flag on something else, it's going to attack that. Now, once that mRNA is transcribed or translated, sorry, um, it's gone. It's already translated. It's used up. So the vaccine isn't floating around in your body anymore. Once your cells uptake it and take in that mRNA and your immune system recognizes it, that's it. It's not going to replicate. It's not going to go into your DNA. Your DNA is very well protected. There's no possible way for it to even get into the nucleus.
And why
Um,
is there no possible way? We gotta stamp that out.
because your nucleus has its own protective covering, and I'm just going to keep it in layman's terms. It has its own protective covering. It's kind of like gatekeeping. So I wish I would have bought visuals. Uh,
Boy, yeah,
visuals are so good, but
yeah.
if you remember what the cell looks like
Don't you
from,
the Twizzler? That's how you explain it to me, right? Can
yeah,
you do that?
uh,
No.
yeah, I wish I could just bring it up real quick. Um, I thought about it, but my printer doesn't work. But but if you think of it like an egg, that's a good one. An
Okay.
egg. And the yolk in that egg, that yellow part in that egg is the nucleus. And that's really where the nucleus is of the egg. Um that genetic material, the mRNA,
Mm-hmm.
can't go into that area. That area is well protected. So
So
that outside, that white part
mm-hmm.
is where all the translation and transcription happens in the cell. So in the egg is a cell. So it's actually a really good analogy. So what it's doing is it's taking that little snippet of mRNA and it's transcribing those proteins for, in the case if it's our cells, for our cells to use for food and all that stuff and to process oxygen. In the case of the virus, it allows that virus to replicate and to make more of that envelope, so that ball with the little spikies around it and everything, um, to create that ball so that it can go on and infect other cells. So what the vaccine does is it takes that little snippet of that spike protein and it just presents it on a cell. So it gets transcribed and it presents on a cell. And then as your immune system goes around and sees that little flag, or in this scenario, red flag, then it's gonna know something is wrong and it's gonna remember it. So when it comes in contact with it again, let's just say you're at a party, a concert, or whatever, it's gonna know, hey, you don't belong here. I remember seeing something like you before.
Yeah.
And so it taught your cells, your white blood cells, to remember and to know that it's not a natural part of your body.
And it can't crack the egg. The
No,
cell.
and no, it can't go into the nucleus at all. There's some chemical reactions that need to happen in order for it. Remember, I was telling you like the receptor and binding. It doesn't have
Body is
that
so
ability.
divine. The body is so divine. It's unfortunate that there's such other, alien. These are aliens. We talk about aliens, but I look at these viruses as aliens. They're invaders. When we think of aliens, we think of something like ourselves, maybe an animal or a creature. We don't look at it as something we can't really see that might be under a microscope, that might be coming from somewhere else. These are aliens intruding.
Mhm.
We're gonna have real what do you call them? The machine aliens. They're gonna take over later. Y'all watch all these movies I'm talking about. But for now, we're being invaded by viruses. The viruses are trying to take over. They want us off this planet. So look at this as aliens. So I have someone who's pregnant who's asking. She's had the vaccine. Should she be getting the booster as well? How often should she get a shot? Will this affect her unborn child? Which booster should she get? Can you mix them? That's another question. I know I'm throwing a lot at you.
Um, far as mixing, if you had the Moderna and the Pfizer, you can get the Moderna again. You get the Pfizer. You can mix and match. If you had the Johnson and Johnson, then they recommend you getting the Moderna or the Pfizer. Don't get a Johnson and Johnson booster. Um, so I think mixing and matching is honestly good, because if it's targeting different regions, I feel like it would give your immune system more to look at,
Yeah, okay.
and to recognize.
Yeah.
I got the booster and I did get another Pfizer, but that's just because Pfizer is the most abundant, and I didn't really feel like looking around for Moderna, even though that would have been my choice if I was presented with it. But either way, you don't have to mix and match. You're still extremely protected with a booster, even if you got the same shot the third time. So it doesn't really matter. It's honestly, it's a personal choice and how you feel. Um, as far as being pregnant, if you already got the shot, you like, I think I see her question. Um, yeah, you definitely want to get the booster. Um, that's just because you got a little one to take care of. And you definitely want to be well enough to take care of that little one. I'm actually, you bring up a pretty good question that I haven't had a chance to look at. Um, and I don't know if anyone has, because I haven't even heard this, but I am kind of curious, and I'll probably look that up later, and I will share it with Latoya when I get the answer. Is I'm not sure if COVID goes through breast milk or anything like that.
Hmm.
I don't think so, but I am curious to see if there's been any research on that. Unfortunately, the initial clinical trials didn't include pregnant women, so there
See,
wasn't really
that's
a lot of
that's
data.
another. Oh, and I call it confirmation bias. People just, that people they go for news that supports their theory. So if you're concerned or you have reservations about this vaccine, that's all you need to hear. They haven't done studies, and
Mhm.
that's enough for you to say, "Well, I'm not playing this game with y'all." And it's like you have to respect science to some level, and I understand you still have to use your common sense and make a informed choice, and that's why I wanted this platform here today, and I just appreciate you so much, Justine, because I know just looking at the chat, people trust you and they're asking questions because they trust you have an educated response for them, and I think people are really just looking for the truth. But that's the thing. This is so bizarre, you guys. These aliens have invaded us. We don't know how to deal with them. We're trying, as humans, we're we're trying, and we're learning as scientists. Thank God for the scientists that are trying to, get us through this. But those are the kind of things I can understand where people are coming from when they're reluctant because there hasn't been enough studies.
Yeah, and like I said, we're still into it, and there's definitely going to be more studies,
Yeah,
um, including more different groups. That's why you can't. There's no such thing as a survival rate right now. So if you hear people, oh, it's 99% survival rate, you can't calculate survival rate
yeah,
right now, because we really don't know. So and they're looking at confirmed cases. There's
yeah,
cases that haven't been confirmed.
yeah.
And then like there's age and differences and stuff like that people aren't
White
taking
blood
into
cells is the truth.
consideration.
White blood
Um,
cells.
right,
That
and
can make all the
different
difference, no matter how much
conditions.
elderberry you have, right? Is there something that can build your white blood cells naturally?
Elderberry?
Is there something that can build your white blood cells
Oh,
if you're low?
not necessarily build your white blood cells, but
You
it
can't
can
get more.
give you it can help give you the building blocks to help make it the best immune system you can produce.
Okay.
Um, so like I said, if you're malnutrition, then your body's gonna be lacking those things, and you're gonna be more prone to being sick.
Yeah.
Whereas versus if you're healthy, and your body's gonna show that
Yeah.
with that. But I forgot where we were going with this, but but it definitely is.
Pregnancy, just not enough studies to determine if COVID
Oh,
is transmissed through the milk.
um since we're what I was going to say is since this is still new, um, they did exclude pregnant women because at the time they didn't know how it would affect pregnant women.
Yeah.
And I mean, any person who knows a pregnant woman, you're not too quick to jump when it can be, detrimental to your
Yeah.
unborn,
Yeah.
child. So since we're in a pandemic, and they focused on the age group, especially since a lot of elderly were dying from this. They focused a lot on the elderly, and then slowly expanded out. So you're going to start getting more studies on pregnant women. You're going to start getting more studies on 2 to 5. You're going to start getting more studies on those who are immune compromised in this way or that way, or who might be compromised in cancer, or
Yeah.
or whatever that may come about as this continues.
Yeah.
This the saying back last year, when people were thinking it's gonna just come and go.
Mm-hmm.
Viruses don't come and go. So it's going to be a lot of research done. It's going to be a lot of research on the effectiveness of the vaccines on different people, because
Yeah.
we might find out that maybe, and I'm just saying this is hypothetical, but maybe um Johnson & Johnson is better for the elderly and not for the younger, who tend to get the blood clots with it.
Yeah. There
Um
was a question. Somebody was asking, why didn't you recommend
yep.
the Johnson as a booster? But they don't have a booster, right? Am I
No,
wrong?
no, they don't
Right.
recommend the
They
booster
don't have
for
a booster.
Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah.
Um unless that changed. I mean, information changed. I haven't read, and I've been trying to read up a lot, especially since the CDC just did their thing like 2 days ago. They had thing, and I was out shopping, so I didn't get to watch it. Um, but at least the information I had, they recommend one of the mRNAs, and I think that's still true, from what I saw. But yeah, so they will start expanding it to more people, and we might find out that certain vaccines work best for certain people.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love about medicine is that we're getting to more precision medicine.
Yeah.
We're getting more medicine that's specific to certain people, because we see this might help better. If you recall, as Black folks, a lot of people know about certain pills that help with, high blood pressure for Black people. They call it, Black
Right.
people
Because
pill.
our body's existing. Yeah.
So, and it's because they found that it was more effective in those who, had African descent than those who didn't. Um,
That's Viagra. The different potencies based on race.
mhm.
White men get a higher level, then there's the Mexican, and then the black is the lowest level, whatever they need to get the thing going.
So, I mean, and we might get like that, and that's actually a really good thing. It's not necessarily to separate people, but as we started off with the show, environmental factors can play on how our genetics work, and how our genetics changes over time. When I say time, I'm talking about, like, generations. Um, and stuff like that. And even with, like, cancer being more, it's going away how cancer medicine is going. Cancer is very personal. Cancer treatment is very personal.
Yeah.
And so that's where medicine is trying to go. It's trying to make all things kind of personal so that you can get the best outcome for you. So we might get that, and it might change. And I think, hopefully it does, because I mean, I want the best outcome possibly. If this is not the best vaccine, if Pfizer turns out to not be best for me, and I should have got Moderna, I would like to know.
Oh, you don't have a special recommendation to your family members as far as which vaccine to get. You don't say, get this one or get that one. Like for
Um,
me, I wouldn't get the Johnson & Johnson because of blood clotting. I take birth control, so that
mhm,
would be, a prerequisite for me not to get it. you
that
know,
is true,
not to
and
say
they
it's not.
recommend you don't.
Yeah. Okay.
They recommend, if you're prone to blood clotting, to not get the Johnson & Johnson.
And I'm not, but I think I'm more susceptible to it because of what I
Yeah,
ingest.
yeah. So if you're taking, birth control or anything like that, that's definitely a risk factor,
Yeah.
that can come into play, with a lot of things, actually, not even just the vaccine. So, that's why you always want to tell your doctor
Yeah.
everything you're
Smoking.
taking.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
um, what I recommend to my family, I personally recommend if the mRNAs. And it's not really any reason.
Is
Um,
that Moderna? Just
Moderna or
pardon me.
Pfizer.
Okay, so
Pfizer seems to be
you're calling
really
them the
predominant.
technical names. I need to
Yeah.
make sure. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Any of the mRNA. So it's only Moderna
Okay.
and Pfizer here in the US.
Okay. Got it.
Um, if you got family members in different countries, they have to look at those because I
Yeah.
mean, Russia got their own vaccine and
Right. Cuba.
so on. So I think it's called Sputnik or something like that. Um, so they have to look at those because I don't know enough about those. But as far as like the US, definitely I would recommend the mRNA. Now, here's my disclaimer. If I and if I had a family member or a friend or anyone like that, and I knew that they had a transient lifestyle, and I knew that they aren't really good at keeping up with their medical, I definitely would recommend the Johnson & Johnson because it's
Yeah.
one shot.
Yeah.
You take it and then well, it's two now because you definitely have to get that booster with it. But initially it was one shot,
Hmm.
and you were fully vaccinated. So if you or even someone who might not have a stable home life, as far as I think that's good to have that option because you can't
Yeah.
necessarily expect people who have such variations in their day-to-day living
Right.
to come back in at a certain time point.
Right. That's true.
Um, but you definitely want to keep them protected. You definitely want to give them some kind of protection. And Johnson & Johnson is a good vaccine. So I definitely wouldn't say, oh no, no Johnson & Johnson. But I do think that if there was a choice, I would say mRNA. But if you just wanted one and done or one in a booster and done, Johnson & Johnson is fine.
Okay. So shout out to Daryl who's watching on YouTube. He said there's two different doses for the booster for Moderna. Is that true?
Uh,
You know?
I don't know on that one. I haven't heard of it. That don't mean that's not true.
Yeah.
Um I know for Pfizer it's the same dosage. Moderna, I will have to look that up and see. So you might be correct.
What I liked about Moderna is that a black woman helped us develop the vaccine. What I don't like about it is people having serious side effects, even though I know they say that side effects are a good sign that your body's fighting. So, but I
Oh,
just don't, no sickness.
Daryl. Actually, addressing Daryl.
Okay.
If you're talking about two different for oh no. I don't know about never mind. I was thinking maybe adult versus child. Maybe that, but no, I think that Pfizer has only been approved for 5 to 11. So, yeah, no, I don't know anything about the uh, difference in booster, and I'm not sure why there would be a different dosage for boosters.
So
So,
as we
if
move,
you know that, I mean, please share.
yeah, we're moving into the top of the hour, and I'm going to get these questions out. See, people got questions, don't they? I had. So shout out to Amara who's watching on YouTube. She says, "There's as an expert and professional in your personal life." Okay, we answered that one. I'm sorry. I wanted to get to her other question she had. So she did. We did address that one, right? What the concerns that you have about the vaccine, if any? Oh, okay, yeah, that was different
Oh,
from recommendation.
um, for my personal life, when I did get the booster, and I shared this with Latoya. I mean, I have my concerns. I mean, I think it's healthy to have some concerns because when I got my two shots, I literally had like no response. I was a little bit worried that I didn't have much of an immune system because everyone around me complained how fatigued and tired and I was working through through the height of the pandemic. I was still going in. And so, talking to my colleagues, they calling off and stuff just after getting the shot and I didn't have that reaction. But the booster did make me fatigued like they described it, and I did have, some soreness that was a little more than what the flu gives you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was a little bit concerned at first when some of my colleagues who got boosters said that, but when I weigh the risk versus the reward of getting vaccinated, I know too many people who had side effects
Yeah.
from being infected with COVID,
Right.
for me to want to risk getting it. I still work out. I still go to the gym. I do wear my N95 mask, but like I said, nothing is 100%. So if I still want to go on with my daily activities, I definitely want to give the best protection I can give. And since the vaccine, um, I think, let's see, I had the statistic up here somewhere. Whereas, oh, okay, like as far as like, and this, well, actually, this was death, the number of deaths out of the was it 5 million doses, and this was from December 14th, 2020 to December 2021.
Okay.
Um, Out of the 5 million doses, there's been reported of about 10,000 deaths that necessarily wasn't attributed to the vaccine, but it was just reported the person got vaccinated and they died. It could have been from other reasons. Um, they're looking into it, so there hasn't been a direct connection. But
Mhm.
when you look at that number, that comes out to be 0.0022%.
It's kind of like voter fraud.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, when I see that 0.0022% in comparison to anecdotally what I see with my own eyes of people
Yeah,
who have had COVID,
undeniable, undeniable.
I would rather take my chance with that. But with any vaccine, there is a chance. I mean, if you were vaccinated as a kid, there was a chance that the
Right,
vaccine might have an adverse effect. I
right.
get my flu shot almost every year. There is a chance. But I still try to weigh my options. I got my flu shot because I have a niece who was immune compromised, especially when she was little, and
Mhm.
I didn't want to give her the flu.
Right.
So I got it more for her than for myself. But I still weighed the options of taking it versus not.
So the flu shot prevents you from getting the flu, or just lessens symptoms?
Oh, the flu shot vaccine is definitely an interesting vaccine. Um, we got different viruses that can cause the flu. And so they try to predict what's going to be that next um, wave of flu. And they try to guess it, and usually they're pretty good. Sometimes they're off the mark and the vaccine isn't as effective because let's just say they vaccinate everybody for flu A, B, and C, and come to find out it's only flu B, C, and D. So they
Yeah.
forgot D, and D might be the prevalent one. So now the vaccine isn't as effective. Um, so that can happen, but usually they're pretty good at predicting what's going to be the flus that might be circulating around. But that also plays in the effectiveness of the vaccine when you got those different strains.
Yeah. So Dale's responding to the different Moderna shots. He says for if you're immune
Oh,
compromised, it's 0.25 for regular and 0.5 for a full dose. So I guess you have to know when you go.
okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I haven't seen too many Modernas, like I said, given. Everyone I know pretty much has Pfizer. That's because Pfizer's just been the most abundant vaccine. I think because it was the first approved. So that kind of probably played into the market a little bit. But that makes sense. I can see the immune compromise having a different dosage versus if you're not.
It's been very, very educational, informative. I think a lot of us feel more comfortable with understanding the vaccine. I think that's the most important thing. We can't tell people what to do. And like I said, I'm not anti-vax, and I'm not trying to force people to get vaccinated. I understand people's hesitancy. At the same time, I do know that we gotta fix this. Like we have
Mhm.
to do what we can, and just knowing how I was just desperate for my sister, just going through this already with people that I love dearly earlier this year. It scared me. Like I don't know what to do. Like, you hear different things where people that are vaccinated, they're still dying, but they have immune. It's just so much. But I think the more we know, we can make more informed decisions. We don't have to be scared about the decisions we make. Um, because sometimes people tell us things and they don't know what they're talking about. They haven't done the research. And people say, "Have you done the research?" They'll say, "Yeah, I went on YouTube. I went here. I listened to this brother, this sister." Everybody sounds educated. They might have a letter behind their name, but they're also including their opinion. But when you talk to someone like you, who actually is in the lab and understands how these things work, then I feel more comfortable um, with making an informed decision based on what your knowledge base is and understanding how these things really work, you know. And so I appreciate that. Shout out to Kira, who says, thank you, Justine, for your time and your wealth of knowledge. And Denise, who says, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you again. And
I
yes, that's her.
I just encourage everyone, when you do your research, go directly to the source.
Yeah.
You don't want to take clippets from YouTube or screenshots of a screenshot, because a lot of the information out there people have manipulated.
Yeah.
What's in the vaccine? I remember someone in a group I was in was circulating what was in the vaccine,
Mhm.
and I thought it looked a little funny. So I actually went to see what was in the vaccine, and they literally manipulated that information to make it
Yeah.
look like it had aborted fetal cells, and they don't. So that's one example where you might see that information floating around, and because someone closed captioned it or cut it so close where you can't even really fully read it, or they zoomed out so much where you can't even really interpret the chart that they're showing.
Yeah.
So you're allowing them to give that information, and unfortunately a lot of people are kind of nefarious in what they want to give, even though those same people got vaccinated.
Yeah.
So then you also have to think about it,
Right.
man.
That's the other thing. That's Fox News are notorious for that because they should call them propaganda. They should not be able to use the term news because it's very manipulative to people who don't read the fine print. So Fox News is notorious for being anti-vax or just pushing propaganda to scare people. But mind you, anybody who works for Fox News, you cannot enter a building unless you've been vaccinated. So while they sitting up here doing this, trust and believe they got some type of antibody up in their body.
Right. Remember how so many people at the beginning around January, you had people from other countries coming here to get vaccinated.
Yeah,
You had rich people in Florida in
in
that
the
gated
hood.
community
Yes,
jumping the line vaccinating their little rich kids
yes,
before it was even approved for
yes,
them.
yes,
So that should tell you something, that it's not a conspiracy. Like, you got people jumping the line,
yeah.
especially these same people who tell you, oh, you don't need it, while they're getting their loved ones vaccinated, while
It's
they're
a
getting
fact.
their friends, cases of this vaccine and doing private vaccination parties, while they're telling you on TV or on, Facebook not to do. You got to understand where the source is coming from, because
Yeah,
a lot of people will try to mislead you, and I don't know why and what's the
yeah,
purpose or the joy out of it, but it's definitely not helping out society, and we are part of a society. We all have to help out and look out for each other, because if we don't do that, we're going to break down, and we're not going to be as strong as we could be.
shout out to Jimmy. That's dope. He said, "Don't kill no opiates." That's what's up. Yeah, that's what's up. Also, Bonafide Queen Bee, thank you for watching us on YouTube. She says, hearing her break it down scientifically definitely puts it in a different perspective and gives a greater understanding of the facts. That's all I want for my people. Like I said, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm about giving people the resources and the information and you being able to make an informed decision. That's how we should live our lives. We should be able to do the knowledge and based on that information, be able to make an informed decision, not just do
Right.
something blindly. You know, we can't be blind leading the blind, period.
Al- Also, I want to bring in another point is, look how many people have been vaccinated. Look how many of our grandparents.
A lot of
Our
people,
grandparents jumped at that
you know what I'm
vaccine.
saying?
Are they not okay?
Because they know what polio did, right? Remember polio? That was our grandparents' era, right?
So it seemed like us younger people are more, but our grandparents and our aunts and uncles, they all got vaccinated. And they're all doing well, and because they understood the seriousness. And like, I get, as a younger person, you like, I got a strong immune system. It was saying it wasn't affecting us, but we now know that's not true. We
Right.
now know that a lot of young people are being hospitalized. Children are being hospitalized. Pediatrician or pediatric hospitals are being overrun with children,
Yeah.
sick with COVID.
Yeah.
So, like I say, always just understand the source and where it's come from. And don't just look at that one anecdotal, like Nicki Minaj cousin who
And
they live in what?
that is a whole
Barbados, which
nother
is
vaccine too, right? It's
yeah,
not
a whole different.
even the three we use.
And even the whole even
And
the
put
prime
it in
minister from that country was like, no, that's not right. So
Yeah, I
so
remember
just
that.
and I know it's scary because you like, whoa, what they mean, it
Yeah,
causes impotence. Like what's going on here?
yeah,
So I get that it's scary, but then also wait a minute, breathe a little bit and just be like, okay, do this make sense? Are
yeah,
they even in the same country? Like who is
exactly.
giving us
So many other
why is
factors.
it a cousin of a friend?
That all makes sense, and that's how I think. That's I have to break stuff down and make sense out of them. When I ask people why they're not getting the vaccine, I ask them just to see what their answer is, what their response is. Then I'm like, are you telling other people that? Like, I'm just because if you just tell me you flat out scared, I can respect that. But when you start saying things that you're not necessarily, know for a fact to be true, or if it's an isolated incident, I don't want to scare people from possibly saving their life.
Right.
Everybody's different, but it could save somebody's life. If not yours, it could save somebody else's, because all of our bodies are different. So, you know,
Yeah, so I mean, hopefully everyone takes a informed decision, and then at the end of the day, you still want to look out for your loved ones too.
yeah,
If it's not enough for you to decide, look at who you're surrounded by, and that was another factor. And I said this with the flu. I don't want to be the one. Let's just say I'm asymptomatic, or I am. I don't want to be the one to cause harm to my loved one,
yeah,
in worst case death. And I do know situations of that where someone inadvertently infected a family member, and now they're no longer here. I feel like that's probably the worst thing, to know that you probably caused that. And I mean, I feel like that's a pain because you got to live with it.
you
They
can't.
passed
How do you
away,
live with
so
it?
you got to live with that thought. And me personally, I don't want to live with that thought that I could have caused someone I love harm. Like I said, nothing is 100%, but if I can do my part and still hug my mom, still, my grandma's not here, but my aunts, or my dad,
Hmm.
people who I know have health issues, like they're vaccinated, but remember I tell you, elderly people, their immune system goes down.
Yeah,
So there's still a risk of them catching COVID. And that's where you kind of hear those breakthrough cases and stuff like that, because not everybody's immune system functions the same
yeah,
way.
that's true.
So
And then these youngsters come out because they got them super immune system. They out kicking it, mass parties, and they go hug grandma on Christmas, get them some sweet potato pie, and that grandma is going through it, and she just been in the house.
right, right. And knowing it could have been from anyone else, but you were living your best life during a time where you probably should have just kind of settled down a little bit.
Yeah.
So like I get it. Like I said, it's just kind of a bigger picture. Like I said, long haulers, and just even when we talked about the monoclonal antibodies,
Hmm.
supplies, nursing staff. Do you really want to play those games where if you get COVID, you hope there's enough nurses to help take care of you?
Right.
You hope there's enough doctors and enough
Said
machines
nurse
if you get sick.
fatigue. Nurse
So,
fatigue. Yeah, and some of these hospitals, look, they ain't all that clean. They
mhm.
listen.
And
That's
then
not.
they allocate how much medicine they can give each hospital because we're in a pandemic. It's one thing if it
Oxygen.
was
Everybody can't get
endemic and it
oxygen.
was just right, and if it was just endemic and it was just say in Nevada, or I'm in Illinois, so in Illinois or whatever, and then other states can send their resources to you. But no,
Yeah,
this is worldwide, so we
yeah,
all have to share those resources. The monoclonal antibodies aren't just coming to the U.S., they're going worldwide,
yeah,
so it's only so much that can be made.
yeah,
And if there's a way where you don't have to be on a waiting list to get that, because you don't know your odds, maybe
yeah,
you'll get it, maybe you might have to wait.
yeah,
So I mean, I just think of the whole bigger picture and more than just my thoughts of how well I will survive being infected.
yeah,
Because there's definitely more to play into going on in this pandemic than what surface level talked about.
yeah, yeah. It's a lot, you guys. These are very trying times. Like I said, we've been invaded by the aliens, and they want our whole body. They want our lungs. They want our organs. They want our oxygen. They want us out of here. That's how I look at it. And you got to make an informed decision. You got to do what's best for your family and weigh out, look at the greater good and just weigh it out. You know what I'm saying? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying, you know, you know what I'm saying. But yeah, Justine, MSHP in infectious disease and microbiology. You are a godsend today. And I'm just so happy that I got in touch with Belle and she sent you my way. I mean, God, He's really working with me. And I think it just meant to be, because I definitely need my people to have an understanding. I definitely don't want anybody to be misinformed, and be able to have questions answered without feeling like, because some people wag their finger at people that choose to get vaccinated, like you a clown, you a sheep, or,
Mm,
they judge them. And then on the other end, they look at them a certain way, like, how stupid are you? Why aren't you getting a shot? Not understanding what trauma goes behind some
mhm.
people's feelings. It's not, some people is just ignorant, they just ignorant. And then some people just don't understand enough, and they're just scared, and fear just stops you in your tracks, right?
It does.
Yeah, so that's what it is. But I
Yeah.
know, have they issued the vaccine for children under 11 yet? Because I know there's a question about that.
5 to 11 is still Pfizer.
Yeah.
I think Moderna should be coming out soon. I think the FDA still have to review it for emergency use authorization, that EUA. Um, but Pfizer has definitely been approved. So I do recommend getting the children vaccinated. Um, like I said, just because you don't know where your child might lay on that spectrum of recovery. And then also who your child is interacting with.
Hmm.
Like I said, they got their grandparents or your parents and others that they're playing and talking with. And I mean, we love hugs, we love kisses from the little ones. So you definitely want to look at that. One of the little ones in my family, he got his and he's so proud. He 5.
Well, okay.
we,
What do
we
you
we
say?
were at a 1 year old birthday party, one of his little cousins, and he looked at me and he was like, I got vaccinated," and like his mom is a dentist, so she does have medical knowledge and everything. So he was just so proud and he showed me where he got his shot and I asked him, did it hurt? And he was like, no. So they do use a smaller,
Yeah.
needle for the kids and everything in a lower dose, which is good. Kids tolerate it really well. So
Yeah.
I definitely recommend getting it, especially as we want our kids to play. We want our kids
Yeah,
to interact with other
they're
kids. We
not
want
as
our kids to go
conscious
back to school.
of being safe.
Yeah, but we don't also want our kids to be sick. I mean, if your kid had a sniffles and cold, you know how that can be for them. They just want to lay up under you. They just, everything just whiny
Yeah.
and just unhappy.
Yeah.
So then you don't want to put COVID in that mix.
And then I don't want
Um,
to catch it. I love if I had a little one, I don't know how
right,
he'll get well because
right, and this, I mean,
it's hard to be around them. I'm just joking. Just joking.
we're in a country where we don't even really get time off for our sick children. Like I said, there's so much that comes into play that is more than just that. And the vaccines are really safe,
Yeah.
and really effective. But from financial to just getting someone else sick or even you sick,
Yeah.
now that's a loss of income because now you got to stay at home or potential loss of income,
Yeah.
for that moment, if not longer.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just want to be safe and you just want to make sure that everyone is safe and we can get back to some sense of normalcy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we keep not wanting to wear masks and like I said, at the very minimum, if you I promote vaccines.
Yeah.
I do. Um I'm not gonna say I need to shove it down your throat. I mean, I'll give you reasons why I promote it. But let's just say you're against the vaccines at bare minimum, you want to at least have some kind of arsenal. So wear your mask, social distance. We're still in a pandemic. Like I know it gets tiring. Oh yeah, medical bills is a true story.
Yeah.
Um,
How you
and they're
gonna
talking about not paying for that.
get bills?
So, I mean, do you want to be on that late bus and getting COVID after they decide not to pay for
Right.
treatment anymore, or insurances making you, increasing your bill because of it? And that's a real thing. They're really talking about that. Employers talking about not paying for time. Just it's just craziness now that the vaccine is out. So, you don't want to be caught with that financial burden and potential bankruptcy because of it. But yeah, you just want to make sure that you're safe and healthy, and those around you. So like I said, just at least wear the mask.
Yeah.
Um, just don't they now don't recommend the cloth mask. So
Mhm.
and then the like the
Little
homemade
pink type
mask.
one?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
great.
so they definitely want you to wear the surgical mask with the 3 layers at minimum.
Okay.
So, I know I've seen some people with some beautiful rhinestone masks,
Yeah.
unless you got
You
a
might have
filter
to double
pocket
up,
in there.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, if you got a filter
Put a
pocket in
filter.
there, it's probably fine.
Yeah.
I go as far as wearing, like I said, a N95 when I go to
Yeah.
the gym,
Oh
and
yeah.
I still do cardio with
Yeah.
my N95.
I
I
take
feel
my
like my lungs are probably
N95.
even stronger because of
Yeah,
it.
in certain places I definitely have on my N95. I'm gonna be sitting for a long time.
Yeah, and I do it at the gym just because people are breathing heavy, people are working out.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, the gym I go to, I can't speak on all gyms, but yeah, they got the ceiling fans, but I barely can feel it when I'm working out. So I can't trust that air is
Right.
circulating.
Right.
He,
Right. Right.
they told me it is, but I don't think the guy at the front desk really know how HVACs work.
Yeah.
So because that's not his job. So so yeah, so I still work out and do everything I need to do in N95, and I don't take it off until I leave out the door.
Okay.
Um so yeah, so you just definitely still try to social distance and, wear your mask at the very least.
Right. I
Ideally vaccinate, but I do respect that people have to make their own decisions. It may not be what I agree with, but everyone has to make their own decision. Everyone is an adult, and they're right to decide whatever they want, and it is how it is, and I respect it for that. um so yeah, but hopefully, if there's any questions or whatever, I'm more than happy to follow up or anything like that,
yeah, we had
to
what
give
was
people
a
more
question?
clarity.
Um Genuinely poised. She had a question. Are you willing to share your social handles or how they can follow up with you? Um do we just need to do another show or that's up to you.
I don't really have any social handles. And I'm boring on Facebook unless you like into like nerdy stuff. I don't really post necessarily medical stuff, or medical advice. I'm more than happy to, talk to people and share what knowledge I do have. I will admit I don't know everything, but if I can find it, I will find it for you. I don't mind researching it, and I will even show you where I found it and give you links and stuff like that, because I do like to back up what I am saying. Like I said, understand information that you're getting from a person. Can they back up what they're saying? Can they show you where they got that information
Yeah.
from? And if they can't, then you got to question it. It can't be, well, I did my research and it's too. And some guy told me that he had it on the database and he couldn't show it to me at the time, but he can email it to me. No, thank you. If you're telling me you're reading these articles or reading these research papers,
And if you're
please
going to spit
provide.
this out, I think these need to be readily available because I need to understand. I need truth.
Right.
At the end of the
Especially
day,
when you're telling me there's research and there's research papers and it's been published. Okay,
yeah.
then you should be able to provide me a link.
Is there enough
Um,
research about blood type?
uh, I heard that floating around sometime last year. I don't know if anyone really followed up on that. Um, I think it was like one study that was done for that at that time.
Yeah.
There may be more, but the funny thing about a pandemic is people just want to make sure you're not hospitalized or dying. All the other stuff they're not really too much focusing on. So it may be. I don't know why it would be. I'll be honest. Because your blood type, the receptor that it, like I said, it's the receptor and like the virus that attaches.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know why your blood type would dictate what receptors that are found all over, like your lung cells, your pancreas, your liver. I don't know why your blood type will have an effect on the virus. Um, but that don't mean it doesn't. I
Okay.
just can't think of a reason why it would. So hopefully there's more research and
Yeah.
maybe there's something to show for that. Maybe there's something when the red blood cells are being developed. I mean, there's a long line of how cells are made. So maybe there's something along that chain that is made. So I wouldn't rule it out, basically. I just think there's not much information on there that I've come across. Like I said, I think there was just one study done. And when you look at studies, look at the sample numbers that they're using. Um, I recently came across one where they were talking about vaccinated, unvaccinated, and with the Omicron and the Delta, um, antibodies against the Delta might um, also help with having antibodies against Omicron.
Okay.
And this was literally uh, done, I think, in November and submitted. It was an African study from I don't know what country in Africa, but it was submitted like December 20th. So it's like really new. It's one study, but look at that sample number. I'm not saying that they're wrong, but this was literally out of 15 patients with 13 samples taken.
Yeah, it's not enough.
It's not enough. And so to think that if you're infected with um uh Delta that you'll be protected against Omicron. No, actually I think I got it reversed. I think it was saying those who are infected with Omicron is protected against Delta. I
Yeah.
think that's what the argument was. But if you read that paper and go directly to that paper, don't look at someone's Twitter snapshot of their interpretation. Read that paper because the authors would tell you what their interpretation of that data is. So if you read that paper, they tell you that it was 13 samples taken of vaccinated and unvaccinated. And I'm assuming there was two samples of just um, I forgot what they call it, undetectable.
Okay.
And so it showed that the vaccinated people had a higher antibodies for both the Delta and the Omicron compared to the unvaccinated. Now they both show, antibodies, but what the authors are telling you is that being vaccinated actually provides you with more protection. They literally say this in the paper. And then also the sample size is small. So you can't necessarily say, and this is only one study, you can't necessarily say, oh, well, if you get infected with Omicron, you don't have to worry about Delta. And I think that's what it actually says now that I remember it correctly. So don't go just off of one study. I mean, that's one thing with science. You want abundance of evidence to make your conclusion. And like I said, and it still can change as more evidence comes in.
Yeah.
But I can tell you 13 patients
Not enough.
it's not going to tell you enough. Now it's interesting. Don't get me wrong; it's very interesting. Um, but I wouldn't base my life and
Yeah.
try to get infected with Omicron just to think that I'll be protected against Delta. So definitely read those papers thoroughly. Go back to the source that a person is quoting and make sure that they're actually quoting it correctly. There's, like I
Yeah.
said, there's a lot of misinformation on what Dr. Fauci said. I know people might not like Dr. Fauci, but we know people like to manipulate
Yeah.
video and information and take snippets and make their own conclusions to support their argument. So like I
The
said,
other thing is we have Dr. Fauci, but then there are some doctors, I can't name one, and any person I talk to can't name them either. But there's rumor has it, other doctors who don't agree with the vaccine. They don't support
mm,
it, but we don't hear about that. You think it's
uh,
fair for them to suppress that?
I don't think they're really suppressing it. I mean, you can find them on Fox News and all that stuff. You can always find somebody who
That's
who
propaganda.
disagrees. I mean, there's people who still think the Earth is flat.
Yeah. True.
One of my favorite things, and I mean, hopefully this doesn't offend anyone because I love it, but I have friends who believe in a flying spaghetti monster out in space.
Yeah.
They're atheists, but they love talking about the flying spaghetti monster. I can't disprove a flying spaghetti monster, and that's a real thing that people talk about. Um, so like there's all you're gonna find always there's people disputing climate change. You're always gonna find that one dissenting voice. You can find it in your friends. All you guys can agree to do something. You got that one person that just always want to be different.
Mhm.
I think that's just part of
Different.
human nature. I don't think they're necessarily getting suppressed, but it's dangerous to spew misinformation and propaganda.
Yeah.
We've seen this throughout history where groups of people and others have really been harmed because of it. And I mean, some people might want to think of Nazis, but I mean, you talked about the Tuskegee
Yeah.
experiment, and I can see where back then that caused harm, and I can see where it's causing harm now. The misinformation from what actually happened
Yeah.
back then. And I suggest if you never seen Miss Evers Boys from the HBO show, that's a really good movie on what happened with
Yeah.
the
Yeah. I've seen that
Tuskegee
one.
experiment. Because there was like a whole congressional hearing on it. But back then they weren't allowed to know that penicillin was available.
Hmm.
And it was a study on disease progression.
Hmm.
So they didn't get that information. They were just saying, oh, well, we're going to give you saline and whatever else and saying it's a treatment.
Yeah.
While they're watching what happened to those men as the disease, because they didn't know. Because by the time we knew about syphilis, penicillin kind of came out shortly after. So no one really knew what happens, the end result of syphilis. They knew that there was some like neurological and long-term effects, even death from syphilis.
Mm-hmm.
But when penicillin came out, there was no reason for anyone to get that far along in a disease process. So those
Yeah.
doctors down south decided not to treat those men, even though there was a treatment available. And so that's what happened with the Tuskegee experiment. Unfortunately, since that was, decades ago, people think it was the government giving them syphilis. And that's not what happened. The government didn't give them syphilis. A lot of people had syphilis back then.
Yeah.
The government
Yeah.
didn't give them the antibiotics
Right.
to
Yeah.
treat it.
Yeah.
So COVID is not the same as what happened with Tuskegee. So when it's kind of a false comparison when people try to compare COVID to the Tuskegee experiment because it's not the same. Honestly, I feel like we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage by not really getting vaccinated at the same rate as other groups because now we're allowing the disease to progress in our community, and we already got enough going on in our community
And it's
to
attacking us even more vigorously because of our pre-existing conditions, which have been
mm,
put into place just because of systemic racism, and that's a whole nother show.
mhm.
That's a whole
Oh my gosh.
right. Yeah, I think you talked about that earlier. About Daryl was saying that we don't know what the long term effects is, and that was one of my concerns. And you said, well, the vaccine leaves your body, and any side effects that you're going to have, you'll know in the first couple of months. So it's not like something 10 years
Yeah.
later they're going to be like, oh, if you got the vaccine and you just have one eye, you can sue, right?
Um, I will say I don't see a reason why, if you got vaccinated years down the line, it would have an effect. Like I said, the vaccine, what happens is what's in the vaccine, there's no heavy metals, there's no eggs and stuff and fetal cells in the vaccine. What's mostly in that vaccine is stuff that you can find in food, including the fat, which is called lipid. That helps carry that mRNA to your cells. Um, so if you're going to get some kind of allergic reaction, which will be even though extremely rare, most common allergic reaction, and then there's others with Johnson blood clots, and then there's Guillain-Barré, which is like when you start getting your nerves attacked by your cells and you start getting
Yeah.
paralysis. Um, you're going to see that sooner than later. Like I said, the vaccine isn't just when you get the shot, it's not just circulating in your body forever and
It
just
beeps.
being there. It's just teaching your white blood cells to recognize. And once that mRNA is, transcribed, it's done. It's used up.
Got
So
it.
once they enter the cells, it's used up and that's it. It can't be reused again.
Yeah, got it. Again, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Because I know you could be doing a whole lot of other things on a New Year's Day, but the night is still young. You know, you can still do some stuff. I
I'm
might do
boring.
some stuff. I might go to sleep. I'll be talking. But thank you again. Before we get out of here, I know I mentioned what I was grateful for, and a lot of you guys in the chat did too. And I want to thank you so much for sharing that positive energy. We got to keep that good energy flowing. We need that. You know, a lot of us are really hurting and breaking down, and we need everything we can to uplift us. Do you want to share any positive news or positive energy or anything you're grateful for, Justine?
Um, I'm always thinking about microbiology. I'm not gonna lie. Just because I work with it every day, and I really do love, uh, working with people and helping people out the best way I can. So I will say I'm really happy that there's a COVID pill coming out because I feel like I'm just like a lot of you, I am exhausted with the amount of deaths and with the amount of long-term effects that people are experiencing with COVID. And I just want a happier year. I feel like first we started off with crazy politics not too long ago, and then now we morphed that into a crazy pandemic.
Yeah, the
And
alien.
I just want, a little happiness and a little something. So if we can get these COVID pills where a person can be like, oh, I got COVID, I test positive. Let me go to the pharmacy and pop this pill real quick
Yeah,
and move on about their day, that would be amazing.
yeah, awesome.
So I'm ready for that day where you don't even have to go to the hospital. Like just get your pill from CVS, and
You know I'm dramatic. You know I'm dramatic. Denise.
But
It's
yeah,
been
but I'm
so
grateful
much
for my
fun.
sister too. I want to give a shout out to my sister Belle. I love her.
Yes, yeah, that's my girl. That is my girl. You know, I check on her, she check on me, and we just kind of stay, connected because of COVID. You know, I'm always concerned about her, and she's always there for me, and I just appreciate her. She just don't know how helpful she was. Like, she's a lifesaver in this round with me. So I'm indebted to her, and I'm just grateful for her, grateful for you, grateful for everyone that tunes into In Your Ear Radio live on Facebook and YouTube, and those who watch later. I appreciate you guys. I hope that you got something out of this, fruitful, that you can share with others and help to make a more informed decision about whatever choice you make. Okay, love you guys. Happy New Year! It's a made up holiday. It's like the other ones, but like I said, we're gonna celebrate anyway. Thank you so much. Y'all have a good evening. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.